Good evening and welcome to the March 2nd, 2016 Select Board Special Budget Meeting. This will be one of several meetings scheduled in the next week. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start off tonight. Does anyone have any announcements to make?
We do have a traffic signal out on Williams and Redfern, so just ask motorists to be mindful of the temporary stop signs.
All right, there was an accident there, I guess, there this morning, wasn't there?
Yeah, like to pull up.
Yeah.
So, the Williams side is flashing yellow, but it is a four-way stop sign intersection with a temporary stop sign, so motorists be advised.
Okay, good. Anything else?
Just to follow up on that, is that going to be a large expense to do that?
I don't know that we know yet. I think we were waiting to hear back from our signal contractor. They were looking for parts and things like that.
Generally, we try to recover them from accident.
Oh, and then, yeah, we do up front. Yeah, then we file an insurance claim
Against the motorist?
against the motorist.
Anything else? Yeah, I had a humbling, I guess, experience today. We went over to, Stephen and I were both over there to the Blueberry Hill School to participate in a Dr. Seuss reading thing today. It's quite intimidating to get in front of a second grade class. They set me straight. I started out and I started the book, and then I stopped because I had a little story I wanted to divert off, and there was a little guy, and I don't remember his name. He was sitting about 2 rows back, and he was sitting behind a girl, and he finally pulls his head over to the side, and he said, "Can you just continue reading?" And I thought, well, there's a select board chair right there. Then the same kid, a little bit further, he said, "Did you notice that every page you turn," he said, "it goes black and white, color, black and white, color, black and white," and he went on and on and on. And I said, now he's an engineer too, so it's quite an experience to go before a second grader. So, but it was a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity to go over. So. And I started out by the mistake. I told him how old I was, and I said, it's the first time I've ever had the opportunity to read to a class of children at school. And then the hands shot up, and all their grandfathers was way older than I was. So finally the teacher reined it in because it was really turned into a free-for-all. So.
I do want to commend Principal Marie Pratt for putting that program together and bringing some people from the town over to read to the schools. It was probably the highlight of my week, to be honest with you. It's enjoyable. I had a second grade class as well. And it was a Dr. Seuss book that I'd never read. I've read a lot of them, and so that was kind of fun. But I started off by asking who likes cake, so we reached a point of agreement right at the beginning of the discussion. So I had much smoother sailing. Yeah. I went into a trap. Anyway. Okay, the purpose of the meeting tonight is one of several meetings that we have scheduled. We have another one Friday, and then we have another one on Monday. And then there's a couple more next week, too. So we got a lot of meetings scheduled up. It's going to be, the discussion is a one agenda type thing. We're going to be talking budget and items related to the budget. And we've gone through the comments. Is there any select board comments?
Actually, yes, I do.
Okay.
The other day I mentioned a research article on, it said, could adult expectations drive up ADHD diagnoses in kids? And this was from February 23rd, 1916. And they just report that JAMA pediatrics researchers from the University of Miami point to evidence that the rise in the ADHD diagnosis coincided with ever-growing demands on young children's attention and focus. Since 1970s, the researchers said elementary school children have been getting more and more homework, while preschoolers have been spent more time in full-day programs and getting coached in reading and numbers by mom and dad. So since the 70s, during those same years, the prevalence of ADHD doubled in the United States. Now, of course, a number of things have changed since 1970, and they're not saying there's a cause and effect relationship that more stress on children is causing ADHD, but they are saying that there is an association, that they're correlated.
Okay.
So I just wanted to have this reference if anyone wants a copy of this. I'd be glad to make one.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
What were you just talking about?
Attention deficit.
Yeah, attention deficit.
And it doesn't mean a person who doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah. Any other select board comments? Resident comments. Do we have any resident comments? Richard?
Richard Elias, 608 Frank Smith Road. Before I start on this, I want to emphasize that my comments are in no way being critical or criticizing the school committee. They were elected by the town to provide the best education possible for the children, but there's some realities that have to be looked at. I very much resent them telling us what we can cut after town manager has been cutting the budgets. Whether they realize it or not, a lot of those departments are providing services for them. I would ask the town manager to ask the department heads to give the select board a percentage of their budget that's going to the school department for the children. We do offer excellent education. And that's the least we can do, because if we don't put a brain in the kids' heads and make it work properly, we can forget about the future of this country. But there are other things that you also have to consider. I have a feeling that they believe that thing, that we're so flush, deep pockets, that they can spend whatever they want to spend on their programs. Some of them are good, some of them are experimental. I remember many times when we'd like to try this, it's for a year, but they don't go into, the town was going to have to pay for that after that year, where the federal government or the state grants paid for that. And we never got any response saying at the end of that year whether or not it offered any benefits for the children. They keep saying to us that all the people are coming to this town because of the school system. I don't care how good a school system. If you can't walk on the streets and be safe, if your kids can't play in their yards and be safe, if they can't walk to the shops or wherever they want to walk and be safe, if there's not a good police department that responds immediately, whether it's really an emergency or just somebody's concern, if we didn't have a fire department that was there in less than 5 minutes, I think, in all the things. There was a comment made here a couple of, maybe 3 or 4 meetings ago about the fire that they had on Route 5 and the Quint truck. Well, I went to the chief and I asked him about what was happening there. He said the ground around there was too soft to allow them to put out their stabilizers. They did back the truck into the property and went straight up the ladder to get into the house. Also, we almost lost a fireman in that fire. A fireman fell through the floor of that building and trying to make sure it was safe for the people. I just ask that when the select board and the school department get together to finish the budget, that it be remembered that we do not have the deep pockets. We're spending an awful lot of money on many things, and as some of you people have mentioned, it's going to be a point where we have to start cutting. And at that point, I'm afraid that the school department's not going to be one that will be left untouched. So their cooperation, making sure we use the monies that we have as diligently as possible would be in their benefit too. Thank you very much.
Okay, Richard. For those of you at home, you may notice that Richard gets up and comments quite often. Richard's with the Finance Committee in town. He's liaison to the Select Board. Any other resident comments?
Stephanie Jasmine, 123 Englewood Road, and I'm here to talk about kindergarten. For the past 15 years, Massachusetts schools have been phasing in universal full-day kindergarten. Last year, over 90% of kindergarten children in Massachusetts attended a full-day program, and over 85% of them were not charged tuition. As it currently stands, Longmeadow is the only town left in western Massachusetts that continues to charge, while most of the high-achieving eastern Massachusetts towns that we like to compare ourselves to are among those who do not charge. So why has the state moved to universal full-day kindergarten? The standard in kindergarten education has been set by the state to include a full-day program. The current curriculum and set of standards cannot be accomplished in a half-day. This is a curriculum that's set by the state. It's a curriculum and a set of expectations that exist whether you're in a half-day or a full-day program. Trying to accomplish it in a 2.5-hour school day cannot be done. The fade-out effect where half-day kindergarten students were thought to naturally catch up to their peers by 3rd grade no longer exists. The critical time for literacy development and intervention is between kindergarten and 3rd grade. In addition, kindergarten, early education, early intervention is a big piece of trying to get at the large cost of special education. But most importantly, it's a big piece of effectively addressing the needs of every student so that every student can access the curriculum and be successful. Mr. Gold spoke about the large amount of the school budget that's spent for special education, and to that concern, I would add that continuing to charge tuition for full-day kindergarten will continue to leave children behind, and it will continue to require the school to spend more in support staff across future grades that could have been avoided if all students began their education on the same starting line. Kindergarten is a time when early identification and intervention is incredibly effective. With each year that passes, it becomes more difficult and significantly more costly to effectively intervene, not to mention the incredible toll it takes on the child as they struggle day in and day out. Based on data from Longmeadow, the half-day kindergarten program has been disproportionately filled with children identified by the Department of Education as high needs. These are the very students who would benefit the most from a full-day program, and yet they're the ones starting off behind their peers. Based on last year's MCAS data, not even half of the 3rd grade students with disabilities in Longmeadow passed the English language portion of the MCAS. These children should be and are expected to be passing the MCAS. Each year that passes for a student that has fallen behind their peers, it becomes more difficult to effectively intervene, and it becomes more costly in supports. In the same way we need to think about the impacts for charging for full-day kindergarten, we need to think about the cuts to an entire team of teachers at Williams Middle School. Williams currently has a successful language program in place for students with learning-based language disabilities. Because of this program and its ability to meet the needs of its students, many families are choosing to have their children come back to Longmeadow schools from out-of-district placements. This, as you know, has saved the school district and the town a substantial amount of money in out-of-district tuition costs. Cutting an entire team of teachers and automatically increasing class sizes would place the success of this language program and other special education programs and services at Williams in great jeopardy. Part of the reason for the success of Williams' special education program is not only the staff, but also the fact that students are able to be supported with regular education classrooms because of the small class sizes. And as a result, these students are thriving. Moving a school from a level 2 to a level 1, as Mr. Collins did, is because of his ability to address the needs of students with disabilities and narrow the proficiency gap. Cutting an entire team from Williams Middle School, increasing class sizes, going against all recommendations made by Principal Collins last year, and changing what has proven to work for Williams Middle School would not be in the best interest of any student or any tax-paying resident, as I can guarantee you an increase in special education supports would be needed at both the middle school and the high school to address the consequences. Now, I know this is set up to make a statement, and so I did. I know that you have questions that come up all the time about special education and kindergarten, and I always want to get in that discussion, but I'm not part of it. So I would hope that if you do have questions that come up as you discuss the budget about either of those, that you'd contact me, because there's nothing more that I would love than to engage in the discussion. There are topics that I know quite well and I enjoy speaking about.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
I'd just like to make a comment to Ms. Jasmine, and it's not to engage in a dialogue necessarily, but the unanswered question still is, if we are going to pay for full-day kindergarten, what are we not going to pay for? Within all the context of everything that goes on in this town, we just don't have the taxing capacity or allowance under the current law, short of a Prop 2.5 override, to do all the things we want to do. And so the challenge to the select board has been, continues to be, to the school committee has been and continues to be, prioritizing.
Okay.
Actually, I had a question, Stephanie. Because you had, I think at a previous venue, and I can't remember exactly when it was, you had referenced at some point the sort of returns on full-day kindergarten, like every dollar, invested in full-day kindergarten, what it yields. And I don't know, do you remember what that is?
So what they say, every dollar you spent in early education, the current number is 7 you'll receive back in future cost. MIT has gone up into the double digits. It is a high number. 7 would be the lowest.
Thank you.
Anything else, Alex?
No, that was.
Thanks, Stephanie. There was a lady walking.
She's planning board meeting is.
Oh, okay. I didn't know there was another meeting taking place tonight. Okay. Mark had sent an email today. It was talking about, we've set up our forum in this room and had some concern that maybe we wouldn't be able to accommodate in this room. I checked, we can go down to the technology section and set up too, if we need to. And I wanted the board, is there any other thoughts on that, or we can leave that as a second spot, that we can change the location? It's the 16th. I mean, we should be able to anticipate an audience size by that point.
I mean, I don't know that you could anticipate an audience size. In scheduling these things, whether public forums, the priority is usually, at least for me, LCTV and the ability to live stream, so people don't actually have to physically come down here, unless they. I mean, if they want to make comments at the forum, they're welcome to do that.
Yeah.
But to get the information out to the broadest audience and to have it recorded so people can go back and access it anytime they want via the internet or watch it rebroadcast on LCTV, this room is obviously set up the most ideally
Right.
for those things, especially with the presentation capabilities. I know that LCTV does a good job televising out of the Business Technology Center, but it is, it's not set up for that by nature.
We'd be giving up some stuff down there.
And,
They don't have the electronic boards or
Right.
anything else.
I'd hate to move down there and have 3 people show up to the forum, to our budget
Right.
forum.
Well, we can put another row of seats in here too. We could actually get rid of those tables and have seats brought in, and we could bring this speaker chair up much closer, so we can fill this room with considerably more people. And I think last year, I think you had almost a representative from every department that you had in for the forum. And maybe we can rethink that a little bit. Maybe there was not a reason to have everybody here, so.
Can I speak to this?
Sure. Yeah, the station manager just came in and he's going
Now we have to pay
to.
attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the guy behind the curtain.
From the LCTV point of view, using the BTC is a nightmare. But what we can do is put a monitor in there and service the general public who come to the meeting with a view of this setting. Now, feedback, they'd have to come back in here and use these mics for.
Right.
That's feasible. That room's awful down there.
That's what your
TV.
Doug was saying too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we could look at it in that fashion.
So Tuesday night, we had a forum in the auditorium. Does that work? I mean, I know that, you hate to have an auditorium with 25 people show up, but my concern is that if 35 or 40 people show up, it's very uncomfortable in this room.
Yeah.
You know,
But if you use the BTC as an overflow mark, that's what I'm proposing. Now, to answer your question, yeah, we can go live from the auditorium if you prefer.
That's fine. I mean, I know that in the past, we've done it in the community house, which is absolutely abysmal.
Yes.
I would not suggest doing that.
No.
We'd also done it in my tenure at Glenbrook Middle School.
Right.
We've done it in the high school. So there are a couple different places. I just didn't want to repeat what we had here with the DPW forum when 40 or 50 people showed up and they're literally, we're standing in the hallway because we've been prepared for it.
Mhm. Yeah, Marie?
Historically, we've had, unfortunately, empty rooms. And I think this room would be sufficient with a couple of extra rows as well as an overflow if we do get more attendance than we have. I think in the past, we've tried to accommodate, whether I did the over 60 room and we had 2 people show up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm strictly I'm addressing the LCTV issues only.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and I
Okay.
love the live streaming, and you can only live stream here. Is that correct?
well, if we get the signal to our control room, we can live stream it.
You
So
can.
the auditorium, we can live stream because we can get the signal to our control room. But every other venue, no, we
No.
cannot live stream. And this is ready to go for it, so that's why. That's why we set this one up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think part of this is dependent on how well we advertise it, because, I mean, we've had years where we don't even put a sign out there, and I would say 99.9% of the people just don't know what's happening. I mean, I would like to see more people come, but I think it's kind of incumbent upon us to try to help generate that audience.
Well, it's going on the website and in the newspaper.
And the boards, I don't think is a bad idea at the end of town.
Yeah. So, okay, Dave, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we'll get back with you, Dave. Okay. Okay, Stephen. I guess it's the Stephen show now.
Yes. So we talked Monday jointly with the school committee, and we then met separately from them after. And you've had the town manager's recommended budget now since Friday. Some information was requested. That information was sent out today. I hope everybody received it and has had a chance to review it. One of the things we talked about was, I felt like there was good collaboration and communication between the select board and the school committee. And so the question was, how do we get to a place where we can kind of close this gap between what the school committee approved and what was in the town manager's recommendation. And we talked about a few concepts, including the select board policy initiatives. And the schools also indicated a willingness to seek areas of compromise. So Paul Pasterzik and I, and then the other open-ended item was the increase in our health insurance premiums from Scantic Valley. That number was set this morning. It was not as bad as we were carrying, so that was favorable. It was a favorable movement of about $100,000 from what we presented, what you received Friday and we discussed on Monday. So with that information and some of the feedback we got on Monday night, Paul and I went back into the budget and our line items and made some more adjustments, made some more cuts, restored a few things that were talked about, and then kind of built into our numerical construct a contribution from the schools of about $150,000. We did not identify a source for that, but that was basically that number was the number was a derivative of the areas that we continue to cut and the reductions in the policy initiatives that we made, which were significant. And like I said, the schools had indicated willingness to compromise. It works out to be about half of the $308,000 that was the initial gap between what the school committee approved and I had recommended. So we have, I sent this information over to the Assistant Superintendent, Tom Mazza, for his information. So at least one member of the school department is aware that discussion is taking place. And I'm hoping that they will be open to compromise as they suggested Monday night. You have the list. There's about 36 things on the list here. I can go through them individually. A lot of them are just smaller line items that we've made reductions to. None of them are very large. And the one thing I want to say is there's 3 columns. One was the department request. The middle was is the reductions that were made as a result of Monday night's discussion. And then the final amount is the new budget number that we would be recommending. And the one thing I want to say is there are places where column A minus column B equals column C, but there are places where it doesn't. And as we go through the different iterations of the budget, we make reductions to certain line items as we go to try and, because the department requests are always more than funds available. The sum total of department requests usually start off as greater than we have, and that's because they frequently put in supplemental budget requests, and they want to expand the work that they're doing because they know how important the work that they do is to the town. Sidewalks are a good example. The sidewalk budget was expanded greatly under the department request from the DPW. We scaled it back, as you can see. So Paul and I go through a series of line item reductions, and so different iterations may have occurred before that, between the department request number and the 229 reductions. So there are some line items that were reduced before we even got to February 29th, and then were reduced again based on Monday night. So most of them line up where column A minus column B equals column C, but there are a few that don't. It's not a numerical error. It's just that to try and incorporate all the line item reductions that have taken place over the past couple of months you wouldn't be able to really read it.
But, excuse me, Stephen, if I could, so why wasn't there a column in here that said department request, if you will, 227 town manager recommendations, 229 which is really 3-2 recommendations tonight's recommendations, so that we could see that progression. That would have helped me better see the progression of these.
I guess, Mark, the only thing that really matters is the bottom line, and the bottom line is the
Not
right
to
hand.
me.
Well, the only thing that really matters in the discussion is the right-hand column, because we were given a directive to deliver a balanced budget, and if I included all the other columns, and truthfully, it really is. I mean, seeing what happened to diesel, gas and oil line item over the course of the development of the budget, I don't know what that really shows, other than we had to get to a final point that balanced out. So, and they're only, and I guess if you went through, you could probably figure out in your head which of these don't do that, but the spreadsheet would get kind of complicated and unreadable at that point. We wanted to make the information as approachable as possible. I mean, I'm happy to show you I've got half a dozen of these master things with marked up notes that I've been using. I'm happy to share them, but I just assessed that really what we wanted to get to was the final recommended numbers to get the budget balanced.
Yeah.
So I guess one thing I'm not quite following from this sheet, Stephen, is in the 229 reductions, there's this red number of 781,201. And I thought we were dealing with a $308,000 shortfall. So where does the 308 and the 781, what's the correlation between those?
So the 781 is essentially the school department's projected number, their 1.1 million and change number that they approved. That 781 is the sum of the difference between the increase in their budget, which was the 1.1 million, and not the allocation, but the assumption we were carrying of the 808. So
Okay.
they, that deficit with the school committee's approved budget was $556,000 between what we were projecting and what they actually approved. So it's the 556,000 plus the 225,000 for Scannick Valley that was kind of late breaking information.
Yeah, I guess I'm not following it.
Wait, I don't follow it.
You know what, it might be if I can jump in.
You gotta come
Once
up
you-
front, Paul.
I mean, this document you have in front of you started off as a worksheet that we used internally to track how measures we were recommending affected the deficit. The deficit is the combination of the additional Scannick Valley premium costs and the difference between in that $308,000 plus the deficit we were already carrying, because when the school committee took their action, we hadn't yet balanced the budget. We thought we were 200,000 and
Right.
change off. We were still we were about 250,000 or whatever the number was off from being balanced, and we were working on that. And then on the night the school committee approved their budget, the deficit went back up to 556,000 because they went with $1.1 million increase instead of an $800,000 increase. So so in earlier versions of this worksheet, that number was 556. And then when we got word last Wednesday from Scannick Valley, what the increase in the premiums were gonna be, we added that to that top deficit number that we had to tackle to know when we changed the things below, what balanced out.
If I could, Stephen, with all due respect, the only thing I have is a budget sheet that you gave us, a line item budget, from which we were asked to, and I thought, the responsibility of the select board now is to take the town manager's recommendations, understanding everything else, and discuss it and collectively come up with a balanced budget. What I hear tonight is that you went back unilaterally as the town manager and revised your town manager's revised budget. And I guess the first question I have is, if you can make these cuts, why didn't we see those on the first sheet? And, you know, and to some degree, I got more pieces of paper here in more different formats. And I don't mind the different piece of paper, but I would have preferred to have varying revisions of the same budget document showing a progression of the budget. For example, I don't see anything on this sheet at all that says anything about Scannick Valley in it. But now we're hearing that. So, and I know that's new information, but if it's new information, it ought to go in the budget sheet. That's why I said these items ought to show up in a budget sheet. And I understand your process, but your process isn't a process I've done any time in the last 6 years that I've been doing this through the select board. And I'm concerned because, you know, you've taken the tact of saying, you're gonna balance the budget. Then what the heck are we doing here? If you're gonna go out and balance the budget, there's supposed to be an input from the town, input from the select board, because, you know, I'm not comfortable with a lot of these line items still, and I hope other members of the select board aren't. So I appreciate this action, but the fact is that it's in a total different format. I think I'm as knowledgeable as anybody on this select board of the budget and the budget process, and I gotta tell you, I don't follow it.
Okay. Marie?
I think it's perfectly logical, and it's coming off of our last meeting when we were with the school committee. And I think you even said at the end of the meeting, it's a rounding error, let's see what we can do. And the town manager says, I'll go back with Mr. Pasturcik after we find out what's happening in Scannick Valley and bring a proposal on how we can maybe make a compromise with the school committee. And that's what the first thing is, and it was worked till late this afternoon to bring this to us. And this is often done separately. I think the year you were on with Paul, you had meetings of compromise with the school committee. He's including the full board for us to decide with these recommended cuts from our CFO, do you think we can make a suggestion with the school committee that we've made our cuts and hand it back to him? It's not, later when we want to go back and do the full thing, we can do the full thing. I mean, I felt it was a logical step. I understand that column not there. That doesn't bother me. We have a big problem on our hands, and that's Scantic Valley had a bomb dropped on all of us last week, including Scantic Valley. We're trying to work with that and the school committee so that we solve their problems. I think I'd like to hear how you were able to work on that today. Then we're going to go back and we're going to play around with the whole budget and do the whole thing. I think right now what we're trying to see is if we can come with a compromise after dealing with the Scantic Valley overage and the fact that when you first came in, he was in a hole, 250, plus the school wanted 300. So we're trying to come to some sort of accommodations. Now, you want to look under the hood, that's fine. We can look under the hood, and we're going to spend 4 or 5 or 6 meetings. But I thought the first thing that was being asked is if we're going to go ahead and try to make a discussion with the school committee from our last meeting.
But this wasn't a discussion, this was a capitulation.
No, well, this is
to some degree,
this was a
because-
comment, a
Well, Maria,
recommendation.
You're the one for years pushed on the forestry line. Are you comfortable cutting $195,000 more?
He
from the
hasn't
budget?
even finished the presentation, and then we can
But-
discuss if we agree with it.
But we're already ready, prepared to go to the school committee saying you only have to cut $150,000. I'm not even prepared. I don't think that number is a reasonable number.
Well, let's hear the presentation, and then we can decide whether we like it or not. You're saying, I don't even like the presentation, the format of it. We've got a lot of work to do here. And then if we want changes in the format as we go forward, but if we're just going to throw this out completely, I want to hear where they made the suggestions, and we can put our input, like you said. Maybe we'll say we don't like the cut of, what was it, 100 from OPEB, and we want them to go back and look at something else, or maybe you're going to say I don't even want to consider further cuts of 150. That is a discussion on whether we're going to agree to this. But I thought what was coming in front of us was what we were expecting.
So, if I can just comment on that, we were asked to show a list of cuts that we had made. We had talked about how we had cut the budget to get to balance, to get to what we presented Monday night. We were asked for a list of cuts. And then at the end of the meeting, after the joint meeting was over and we met individually, there was discussion, quite a bit, about, well, how, we want to try and work it out. What would that look like? And we got the consensus from the conversation that the board wanted to see an option to consider, to present an option that the board could work off of. And Mark, I think, your comment about unilateral almost belies your presence during that conversation, because it certainly wasn't, I just felt like doing this. I felt like spending our entire day doing this. We did it because this was the direction the board was pushing us to go in at the end of Monday's meeting. So you were here for that, so you should understand perfectly clearly that A, the board wanted to be presented with an option, and B, the board wanted shown in the form of the cuts that had to be made. Now, if you want to sift through 14 pages of line items to ferret out where all the cuts are, that's fine. I didn't think that was a time-efficient way to do it. So you have it now. Do what you do. But to suggest that somehow I'm trying to usurp the process by choosing a format that we thought worked easy for everybody to understand where the cuts were made, I reject that.
I could just, I'm not getting this. If Marie, if you're getting it, because I didn't understand Stephen's explanation. And if you can get, I'd be happy to understand it from you, how 781-201 relates to the 308,000.
Paul said he
All right,
was going to go to
okay, but you said you understood it.
I
though.
understood it, yeah.
Ask him, Paul.
I did.
Can you explain that?
Well, just very couple things. The 781 started almost when we were in the middle of the process, and we were off, basically, as Stephen said, $556,000. That was, and again, this is at the beginning of the then they're in the middle of the process. Then that $556,000 jumped up to the 881 because we had to add $325,000 for Scantic Valley. And it might be confusing because you folks don't see the beginning, that point where we started from in any of the material that you have. I can appreciate that.
Well,
but what basically what we have here is what the town manager presented on Monday he presented a balanced budget with a certain list of cuts. Those lists of cuts are basically found in item, or column 2. That would have basically had his balanced budget on Monday night. What we also tried to do is add back into the budget, above and beyond what was presented to you Monday night, the full school committee's budget of the $1.1 million to accommodate the kindergarten. So from Monday night, we tried to add in $308,000 and come back to you with a proposal on how we're going to fund that $308,000. The first $100,000 of that $308,000 is coming from the Scantic Valley rates that they set.
Say that again? What was the number?
The first $100,000 of the $308,000 that we were trying to find to fund kindergarten, or to fund the full school committee's request, came out of the rate-setting process this morning by Scantic Valley. It's basically going to be about $100,000 less than what the town manager had presented to you on Monday night.
Okay.
That was the first $100,000 that we took off.
Is that 100,000 you just referred to anywhere on this sheet?
It's basically a net of the 881 that I had referred to before, and again, I know it's hard to follow. Mine is
Is
the 100.
881 on this sheet?
The 881 is not on that sheet, but you see
Okay.
781. On the very top in the red, you see the
Okay.
781.
So 781 takes into account the minus 100.
Right.
Got it, okay.
Subsequent to that, Stephen and I went through and he added at least one item back into the budget that we had taken out originally from Monday night, and that was the care of the Blinn tennis courts. We added that back in the budget. So we were now, at that point in time, roughly about $230,000 off. From that $230,000, he has asked potentially the school committee to come up with $150,000 of that. And that the other $80,000 is basically an adjustment, a further adjustment to your select board initiatives. Your select board initiatives, as again, they were going up in certain areas. They were not met fully with Monday night's presentation. We went back and looked at those and said, the only way we're going to do this in the absence of using reserves is to trim back even further the initiatives that we had in place to go up, to the amounts that you wanted. That's kind of the summary of how we got from Monday night to tonight. It's all about the 308,000. But the listing, and I think that probably one of the biggest topics of discussion, I think, should be basically the reductions in column 2. That if you went through this line item budget, you're going to see those reductions and they're probably the most controversial. In the last listing of cuts that we had made, those are the ones that are probably the most controversial and probably some of the highlights that you folks would want to discuss. There might be other cuts in here, probably smaller in amount, that are in here, and they're very logical cuts for us to explain, but these were the ones where we really got down to the 11th hour and said, these are the cuts we really had to make a decision on. And these cuts here are basically how we got to in essence, a balanced budget on Monday night when we presented the cuts in column 2.
Wait a minute. So I guess I'm still not, because when I look in column 2 and I add those numbers up, that's clearly more than 80,000. So I'm not sure what you're referring to.
We're showing you this when we started somewhere in the middle, when we were $556,000 off originally. Then we added the school number, and then we added the Scantic Valley number. So I can appreciate the difficulty in following this because we're giving you something that you don't have our beginning point.
So, can I just make one comment? Just hopefully illustrate that further before you ask him a question?
No, I wasn't going to ask a question. I was just going to say, I think column 2 is sort of what I was asking for because we were making compromises in cuts and programs, and I had asked you, where were those cuts so that we could know what sacrifices the town was making? Because you had gone and done all this work before we even came to the school committee, and that was after the school committee had left. We said, but what have we already cut? Where are our programs' losses?
Exactly.
And this is column 2.
This is kind of the summary of those cuts.
Those losses.
Right, but it probably wasn't at square one. We had probably started to do some cuts prior to that, and there still may be some cuts if you look through here that there still might be some minor cuts there that were reduced or corrections that were taken out that are not listed on here, that again, we could address those, but again, they were done. They were the low-hanging fruit.
And the 80, was that 50/50 OPEB, or did it all come out of OPEB, or half of it come out of capital? Where did that 80 come from?
I believe roughly 38,000 came out of capital.
Okay.
Another 30,000 came out of OPEB.
Okay.
See, and this is where I'm not following you, because when I see capital in column 2, it says 148.
Right, but Monday night's presentation only had a cut of 110.
So, if,
All right, I mean, I guess, you see, you
I
see the
understand.
confusion.
I understand what you're saying.
That's why you
Because I'm
need a
trying to-
column of what it
I
is on
understand.
Monday
I'm trying to
night.
reconcile what we were presented on
Right.
That's
on
where I
Monday
was at.
versus
Where were we
what we're
Monday?
getting here. And I'm sure it all makes sense
No, I understand where you're coming from.
if it lined up, but this is.
Right, and again, with the OPEB, there was only a cut of 91.5 in the OPEB, and you'll see now in column 2, there's a cut of 122,000.
Okay.
All right, so maybe we could figure out which column on the old document to line up with this.
it,
then.
Can't do it.
it doesn't necessarily line up. This is a deficit worksheet, okay? The top number was the budget deficit that we were confronted with based on the increased Scannick Valley costs and the school committee's approved budget number.
As of a certain
Monday,
point.
Wednesday at 10:30.
See, that's where I'm not following, because you told us on Monday that the deficit was 308.
No, the deficit, on Monday, the deficit was 881, because we were carrying the school committee's recommended budget, which presented a $556,000 deficit, plus 325, which is what we're projecting as additional cost. To go back, if you want to go back to the starting point, it's October of last year, where everyone got one of these. That was the budget projection. And our budget, we have the line item master sheet, and then you've got this budget summary. They all look the same every year. And so all that ever changes in here are the numbers. Given local receipts go up or down, we do our Proposition 2.5 local property taxes calculation, and these numbers change. And so the number at the bottom, which shows either a deficit or a surplus, goes up or down depending on how those factors change. This is how the budget always works. To simplify things for us internally and track the deficit in an efficient way, we go through, and actually Paul did this and it was very helpful, pulled out 30-odd line items that were recommended for cuts, that we thought would be things that we would need to cut to avoid laying people off and to have a balanced budget. So that's why we created this little deficit worksheet, so we could have a simplified view of where's the budget deficit, and when we add these things or detract these things and we plus or minus it, how does it impact that? Now, what's counterintuitive is that it's like additions are counted as subtractions, or subtractions are counted as additions, depending on how you look at it. So I had a hard time with it a little bit today too. But all this does is show that with the reductions we've made, and with a $150,000 commitment, an additional $150,000 commitment from the school committee, we can go to town meeting with a balanced budget based on these things. That's what we wanted to present. Was this is what that would look like.
So, Stephen, you said that what we were again, I must have missed it, because I kept hearing 308. I never heard 881, but maybe it's on the sheet. Is 881 anywhere on the sheet you presented us on Monday?
No.
Okay,
think
so
so.
then I'm really lost, because you,
It's the math of the two figures.
well, but where?
Well, he gave you the two figures, and one was 556 in the OPEB.
Well, first of all, the budget line item master doesn't show the deficit.
Yeah.
The deficit is shown on the 3-page budget sheet.
Budget overview?
Yes,
Okay,
budget overview.
Could you point to the line that you're referring to?
Which version do we get? Monday night. We have one. If on the first page there's excess deficiency line there. When you look at
I'm
the
sorry,
version
which
I
line?
sent out.
No, Stephen, it is going to be very difficult because this sheet and this sheet don't start from the same starting point.
Right.
So it's going to be very difficult to explain how it came about. But again, I don't know how else to say this, but we had originally started looking for $881,000 worth of cuts.
As of what point? Because I guess the other thing that throws me, it says current shortfall as of 3/2016 was 781. So, and you were saying that, and I understand that you've been working on this repeatedly, but like, at what point were you at 881?
Monday, when we had the school department deficiency, the school committee's request was $556,000. Between
We were at 881 prior to doing this reiteration.
correct. Monday, when we told you we think Scannick Valley could be an additional 325. And again, it's all based on the starting point for this exercise we're going through now was really the night the school committee approved their budget and then submitted the budget to us. That was a $1.1 million increase over FY16 when we had been carrying an $808,000 increase for FY16.
Yeah.
FY17, excuse me, FY17. So that vote, if you will, or that submission on paper added $308,000 to our budget deficit, which we had whittled down to, like I said, 200 and change internally. Just working kind of red pen on the things. So then all of a sudden, that is what gives you the 556. The night they voted, the official deficit based on just the school's budget that's been proposed was 556. Last Wednesday, we learned from Scannick Valley that the funds we were carrying for our health insurance premiums, which were included in our budget number that still had that $556,000 deficit, was now going to be potentially up to $325,000 greater, which then turned it into a $881,000 deficit. And we kept that. We had that number at the top of our little worksheet here, and set things up so if the number came back more favorably, as we discussed Monday night, we could then just make the adjustment. So, when Scannick Valley voted today, Paul called me and said, it's 225 is the number. So we change it, and so we start the day, our process today, off at 781, that we needed to make adjustments to get to zero.
But didn't you say that you were presenting a balanced budget on Monday?
And we did, but my recommended budget for the school committee was $808,000
Right,
over.
308.
Was 308 less than they had
Right,
approved.
exactly.
Right.
So I get that part. So I'm understanding the 308. What I'm not understanding is the other part of it.
Now, with that, maybe I can take over here. If we thought that after the school committee's presentation...
I guess you can take
based
over
on-
if you asked to take over.
May I speak?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Okay.
If this presentation you gave us had a balanced budget with an allowance to the school committee that would go up by a certain amount of money.
808.
808, right? They went up more than that. Because they went up more than that, we said we're out of balance by $300 and something thousand.
556, based on there, because they went up more than that.
Okay, so,
Plus the Scannick Valley.
but your budget had the higher Scantic Valley number in it.
It did.
So
But we were still 308 off,
we were 308 off.
based
Right.
on, according to what they approved.
According to, if we adopted the school committee's budget as they approved it, we were $308,000 out of balance. And then we said, and I thought we're going to go and listen to Scantic Valley, and they're going to come back and say, okay, now, and I guess what I need to know is, because what I have here is, it was going to be a $623,610 increase. That's what it says in this. That Scantic Valley the employee benefits, liability, property insurance was a 623, 610 increase. Now, I know that's more than just Scantic Valley. You know, the question is, and it said 17% increase in health insurance premiums. So the question is, what is that number now?
523.
Okay, so it's $100,000 less. So our 308 that we were out of balance should only now be 208 that we're out of balance. So I repeat, where's the 781 come from, which was out, we're 208 out of balance without any changes to the budget you presented to us on Monday.
Let me try to explain it in a different way. If you go with column 2 and cross off the 781, 201 up on top, go to line
Sorry,
30.
781.
Yeah, just cross that off.
All right, okay.
Just cross
all
that
right.
off.
Yeah.
Go to line 35,
Yep.
and instead of 122, 361, put in 91,500. And then for the capital initiative of line 36, instead of the 148, put in 110, 250. If you look at everything in between now from line 1 to line 36, with those adjustments, that is how Stephen and I got a balanced budget to you on Monday night. Those are the significant cuts that we made, or adjustments to revenues, to give you a balanced budget on Monday night.
These reductions here were in that spreadsheet on Monday night?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought they were.
Okay, so lines 1 through
The changes from lines
32?
1 through 36
Right.
are all incorporated in this spreadsheet.
And the purpose of column 2 was that discussion we had at the end of the meeting was what we'd like to see a list of what cuts we had to make to get to a balanced budget on Monday, previously to Monday.
And I agree,
Yeah.
but that's,
So it
I gotta
hasn't-
tell you, I thought Stephen said these were new cuts made since Monday night. That's what I thought you said.
Some
This
further-
represented the
No,
new
but
cuts.
Paul just laid out,
229 reductions is what it
Right.
said.
Right.
Yeah.
but Paul laid out for you the numbers that he just said, adjust these numbers this way. That's the way they were Monday night. The difference between what he just said verbally and what you have in front of you that I just handed out are the adjustments we made today. The further adjustments we made today to balance it today.
That's not what Paul just told me. He just said that column 2, which says 229 reductions, that column are the reductions that were reflected in the budget we saw Monday night.
To provide you a balanced budget at that time. Yes.
Right.
Yep. I mean, the only other change, I will say, the 11.7 for line 23 also needs to be in column 2. Because that was a cut on the 229 budget.
Right, okay. So,
I missed that, okay.
but
But all those are incorporated in a balanced budget that was presented to you Monday evening.
yet, Paul, when I look at the budget Monday evening, OPEB liability was presented as 275,800. That's what was in this document I had Monday. Page 11.
Right, so, right.
The fourth to
Right.
bottom,
Okay.
page 11, right?
But
And
it's
yet,
all-
when
it's
I
all-
look at what you've got now, you're saying it's final amount 275,800. It's the
Yeah.
same.
But if you
You're
also
right.
look in the comment column, Mark, you'll see there's a little notation, it's down 91.5 from your 122 initiative.
Oh, I understand.
Okay.
On Monday night, it was down. I understand that.
Okay.
But I thought I heard you say it was cut again.
So on the bottom 3.
Didn't I
you
hear him
have-
say that?
It was
was.
cut again.
But-
And so,
To make up the 308,000,
But you're not showing it here because it says final amount
on this one,
270.
no, but on,
not here.
not there.
This one is not updated yet.
And
But neither
truthfully,
is the thing that Stephen emailed us today.
It is, but then you have to look at the one Paul, that we sent out earlier that shows the three proposed, the 3 policies in greater detail.
This,
That one.
but this is what we were looking, I hadn't even tried comparing them yet. I'm looking at this, and it's saying the final number is 275,800, which is the same thing I had Monday night. And I'm listening to you say, but we had to cut it some more, and that's why I'm not following this. I mean, either we cut it some more or we didn't.
We cut it more to make up the 308 to give to the school to fully fund theirs. That also
But it
is
doesn't
not,
show on this paper
I can
or on
appreciate
this
that.
paper. So I'm listening to it, but I don't see the numbers. And Marie, that you see them, I'll give you clairvoyance on this one.
He didn't give me those
Okay.
last two numbers. So that's why, you said there's a next piece of paper that you want to,
Well, no, there's not a next piece of paper. I mean, what we can do is we'll get you the update with these adjustments. I mean, that, and if you want to start from there, but
So, Stephen, my final, were there any other line item adjustments after Monday beside adding back 11,700 for the Berlin courts?
the only other adjustments were made to the selectmen's initiatives, which I.
That's the only, so essentially, I'm gonna go back now, because I think I'm getting it.
Yep.
We had 308, that's now 208, which is what we need to balance the budget because of the Scantic Valley difference.
Correct.
We're gonna take that entire 208 out of Select Board initiatives as a
No.
difference from Monday till now.
No,
No.
Stephen asked for the school committee to come back and reduce the 308 by 150.
Okay, so then we're gonna get 58 out of this additional, out of the Select Board
Right.
initiatives.
Correct.
well,
Is that,
no,
I
there's
think
also
it's-
the Blinn
Whoa.
tennis courts.
Well,
The
we'll give you
Bliss-
70.
It's actually,
Yeah.
it's the Bliss tennis courts.
Bliss,
It's the clay
yeah.
tennis courts.
right,
Okay.
right.
No, but I just want to make sure, Paul, that the additional, the 225 increase that we're going to have for Scannick Valley is still on top of the 308, but not from Monday night.
The 225 was built into, the 325
Right.
was built into Monday night's budget.
Right.
And Mark's asking for what happened from Monday to today, and that's
Right.
what I was looking
Right.
for too.
Yeah.
So the three things were, well, four. We decreased the Scantic Valley by 100.
Correct.
Right.
We added up we put the Bliss tennis courts back in.
Correct.
And you decreased OPEB by
31.
31.
Roughly
and
31,
capital by 38,
yes.
and that was it.
And we asked, Stephen is going to request the school department to make up the 150, which, and
150.
you add all those, should be around the 308.
So,
Or
okay,
three,
so
yeah.
we're cutting OPEB by 31, we're cutting capital by 38 and change.
And that
And are
works
you
out.
looking for
Now I get
a
it.
agreement by this board on
Good.
whether we're going to go,
This wasn't clear.
No?
well, yeah, but they didn't.
I get
give
it,
their
I got
full-
it now, I
yeah.
understand now.
Capital from, capital and OPEB from the
Fine,
numbers
I
presented Monday
absolutely
night.
follow it, but
Yeah.
at this point, I'm not sure why we got this. Because the only change was we added in Blinn and then readjusted the,
A list of cuts.
so what
Was
you did is you went through this and cherry-picked the line, or not cherry-picked, you highlighted and segregated the line items that had cuts and showed it to us here.
We tried to make your life easier, Mark.
And that's fine, but it didn't,
Didn't work.
because I clearly didn't
He tried to tell me to do it the other
Yeah.
way, too.
So-
I'll give him credit for that. He tried to suggest it the other way, but I thought this was a much more one-page
Mm-hmm.
view of the full scale of cuts versus, that document is 14 pages.
So do we,
The line item,
That's-
master document is 14
I
pages.
understand, and that's why we go through it.
so we need to discuss whether we agree to these cuts and the compromise offered to the schools, right?
Who you asking?
Yeah, we're talking.
That's, do we
I
need
mean, I
to?
guess to me, it would make sense to get into, like, if we're gonna talk about capital, I'd like to talk about what's on the capital list, you know?
Well, I think we can always play around with our numbers. The issue is, I mean, if we agree to the bottom line that we're going to, we could adjust the cuts, but I think since we're trying to deal with another board, we should decide whether we agree with the idea of going back and asking for them to work on finding $150,000 of cuts. But if we want to change OPEB and capital and all of that, we could do that, or we could go to the very beginning and try to
Right, but.
do what they spent the whole day working on.
But I guess, I mean, to me, the purpose of these meetings is for us to get a handle on the budget. I mean, you know, maybe there's other things that we'd want to change that would change this. Now, if we were at the point where we've gone through it and we're like, you know, Stephen, you know, this is absolutely correct, we want it exactly the way you did it, then we could sort of make that decision at this point. I mean, to me, it makes some sense to go through this and make sure we're comfortable with the town manager budget and adjust it where we see fit, and then be in the negotiation.
Well, the other part is that, you know, we're looking at the cuts, but what we're not looking at is the increases and asking for verification and justification of potential increases. Because the budget, not a lot of them, and I'll acknowledge that, there are very few, but there are departments that had increases. And so this approach says, well, we're going to decide whether we actually want to cut where the town manager recommended cuts off the department requests, as opposed to saying, are we going to ask for justification on the department increases where the town manager endorsed those increases or supports those increases, where we, and I got to tell you, I've looked through it very carefully, there may be one or two line items. I mean, we're not talking hundreds of line items here. But I think we ought to look at both sides of the coin and not just, let's not make those cuts.
Well, you mean, what are the suggestions you could bring forth now? We could talk about it. My concern is we have to find a way to coordinate between two boards too, as we go through the budget. And we have lots of budget dates set up. We definitely do. And we could do it through departments. Richard, co-chair, any ideas?
I would suggest that if you want to go line item by line item, you have a number of folks behind me, and we concentrate on the DPW and.
Right,
Yeah,
and that's what I thought we were going to do. That's what I thought. Marie, if I could answer Marie's question, I think the answer is we do need to go back to the school committee with a suggested number, but I don't think we're anywhere near that, coming up with that number, and I don't think we should determine that number first and then work our end to it. Let's work what we want to do and we think is right for the town side general government and say, here's what the number turns out to be. You know, and maybe it's going to be more, maybe it's going to be less than what's down here so far. But I guarantee it's probably not going to be 150, but it might be.
It might be.
It might be.
Because I suggested 150?
No, just because you know, things will change during our discussion process.
Well,
always
if
do.
nothing else, I guess the school committee is aware that that's a number that's on the table now, and we're working our way through it.
I don't know that the school committee is aware of that.
Well, I'm sure they will by the end
But
of the season.
I didn't submit it as official documentation to the school committee because that would be kind of.
Oh, definitely.
Right, right.
It's something that's our
But
prerogative,
we let, you know, as you guys know, we work together with the superintendent and Tom Mazza regularly during the budget process, and we share information and try and do this as collaboratively as possible, even if we ultimately can't agree on what a set of priorities are and how we should fund them. So we shared the information so they'd be aware that this was coming and give him a chance to kind of look at his information and address it with his committee. But other than that, I did not take the step of making this a formal proposal to the school committee because I thought that's what you guys are going to do.
Right.
So it wasn't shared with them. It was just kind of a heads up, this is what we're looking at, but certainly you can make a different suggestion.
Go ahead, Marie.
And before we begin, I just want to say, I attended the Scantic Valley meeting, and that is a really difficult analysis. And the treasurer, you did a fabulous job, because we really need to figure out multiple insurances. We don't know how many people are going to pick up what insurance, but I think through the years, we've seen a pretty good analysis. And that was with Scantic Valley setting aside over $1 million to make those rates happen for us. GIC is in big trouble with the Commonwealth. Maya, all the other insurances were having big hits. I think the one thing I'm going to say is a big disappointment is that a previous board decided to empty the health insurance fund that had been built up, and that was $350,000 for events such as this when we got a massive hit. We don't know what's going to happen with the future. They talked about the drug costs just skyrocketing and all of the advertisements not helping. The cost of Affordable Care Act, the fees keep increasing, and Massachusetts has some of the most expensive health care cuts. If we had had that $350,000 fund, it really would have saved this year's budget. And this all came out last week, and Scantic Valley really has done the best they can in a very, very difficult environment. So I want to thank everyone who's on the board, especially our CFO, who the auditor came in and said what a fabulous job he's been doing, and how our cooperative is really one of the best in the Commonwealth. It's in solid ground and is doing very well, but it takes a lot of work from all the members of the towns together. So it is frustrating what we're all facing, but I was really happy that we did come out with $100,000 in savings, and that was a lot of work, and the scenarios were flying back and forth. I've never seen so many come out of our consultant, but she was working well into the night for the past week to try to bring it down to where it did come down. And I think the other thing it brought out to us realize is that the only way we're going to bring down our healthcare costs is if we really start working on getting healthier, because it's just going to get worse and worse as the years go on, unless we're able to keep down our costs. And they're trying to do that through the wellness program too. So I wanted to be sure to say kudos for them, though people might be very frustrated when they see their healthcare bills this year. It really was substantially kept down through hard work.
Mark? Oh.
Yeah, I just to say, the other thing you have to remember, the last 2 years were 0 and 0 for the employees. So
Yeah.
you look at it over a longer period of time, it's a little easier to swallow in that regard. It's not going to be pretty, but, you know, if you look at it from a 3-year term, it's a little bit easier.
You had a question?
Yeah, I want to go back to the OPEB adjustment. The current, I don't even know how to phrase this. Your most recent recommendation, Stephen, Paul, is that OPEB be funded at what level?
It's going to be the 278 that you see on here, Mark.
275, 800.
275, I'm sorry, the 275 in here, less the, roughly the $30,000 cut, or the $30,000
Okay.
difference than I
Okay.
portrayed in column 2.
All right, but $30,000,
So it's roughly going to be like 245.
okay, that's fine, but that number doesn't appear anywhere, because Stephen, even on this.
I have it in here as, I thought the 275 was the final number. I could have entered, I could have
No,
kept it
it's
wrong.
not. I think where you got your number, and again, I had sent
But this
these out.
says 275 on it as the final number. 275
Yeah, it's the final number on the 220, on Stephen's proposal to you. It is it's the number that he gave you on Monday night.
Right, right.
Tonight, the proposal is to cut that again
Fine.
by roughly.
Thank you, okay.
I think it's
so-
31,079.
Until you told us that, there was no way for us
Right.
to have read that in anything that.
And I'm
came
assuming
forward,
he got the
right?
number.
It's not in here correctly, then that's
Okay,
that's my
thank you.
fault.
Right,
All right.
I
That's all I
we
wanted to
did
know.
not update these. We
I
did not
keyed-
update all the detail.
No,
That's
but
all I
even
wanted
this
to
one,
know.
I keyed it in wrong.
Okay.
That's all I wanted to know.
But-
Okay, I get your proposal.
Okay. I'm also assuming that if you look at this sheet, which has your initiatives,
Yeah, which was the initiatives as of 2/29.
as of 229.
Right, okay,
That if.
Which sheet are you on?
The one with the grade,
That
I
graded.
did.
he
Alex,
sent
this one?
today, he sent by
Here, I have
email
a hard
today.
copy.
It's requested information from Paul P.
Yeah, and I'd asked for this in this form. I'm thrilled with it. I think it's great. Thank you. Paul,
Yeah.
that's the same one, okay.
So basically what it's saying
Yeah, same one.
is that the OPEB budget going in for FY17 will be at your old rate. What I actually did is, you have in the middle base there where it says OPEB percentage of levy.
Right.
Last year, it was 0.5% of the tax levy. It was 237.3. Okay? If we kept the same percentage, the 0.50 for this year, it's 244,721. I'm assuming when we come back and make the subtraction, it's going to be 244,721. So we were not able to increase anything as far as your OPEB initiative.
So by cutting our initiatives the way you did, you were able to save $281,502 off the budget.
Yes.
I added those three. If, instead of going to our goal, we cut the budget by $281,500.
So it basically reverted your percentages that you wanted to go up to, your percentage were locked at the 16 rates,
Yeah.
instead of going up to the 17.
Got it. Thank you.
But wouldn't it, since, I mean, isn't the percentage of levy, I mean, isn't it a different denominator from last
Well,
year?
yeah, it is, but it actually goes up from 237 to 244, so it did go up slightly.
How are you saying?
Wait, we're there.
Okay,
The
Here we
point
go.
is,
thanks.
Again, I gave you the levy above that 47.4 versus 48.9, and
Okay, we all through with that? Everybody satisfied where we're at right now? Okay. there's a variety of opinions up here on how we want to treat the budget. Mark, do you want to go line item by line item?
We said we were going to talk with the DPW. They're here. I'd say we go through the DPW budget
Okay,
essentially as an overview and then line item by line item.
okay.
But, so, and I guess we can have them kind of come up and share a chair there.
Yeah.
And the question is,
Maybe, Paul, you can come over here, we can share a chair in here.
before we see if we have any questions
One of
about it.
those or
Yeah,
pull up this?
Paul's going to need a mic, though, isn't he, Stephen?
No, we can share this one.
Well, he could actually pull that mic all the way back there, couldn't he? If he had to? Oh, you bringing up a bigger
No,
table?
I don't think we're gonna be able to do that.
Well, there's quite a bit of cable, Marie.
Just move the microphones around.
Stephen, there's an introduction I think you need to
I'm
make.
about to do that, Richard.
Okay.
You want me to? Okay. So as they get set up, there are a couple of new faces. Certainly Pete Thurber's not a new face. It's a very old face. Our assistant director, our actually highly capable assistant director for water and sewer. You guys know him.
You say highly incapable or highly?
Highly capable.
Capable.
The gentleman in the suit jacket is Andy Crar. He is our new town engineer.
Okay. Andy, welcome aboard.
And the gentleman with the mustache, the other gentleman with the mustache is Dan McCarthy. He is our new facilities director.
All right.
Okay.
Now, is this work for the cameras? Can they see everybody?
Yeah, Marie, there's a camera up here.
Oh, there is? Okay.
Yeah, we're good. All right.
Thank you, Dave.
Voice from above. So, as we talked about earlier today, the DPW, as we get into discussion about the DPW budget, there's 4 people to blame for any situation. The 2 new guys sitting here and the 2 guys that they replaced. So we're in good shape. We're good. No, in all sincerity, I do want to this. As everyone on the board knows, we've had a remarkable amount of turnover at the Department of Public Works in really almost all of the management positions. This is essentially, other than Pete is the only one sitting there that has actually been through a town budgeting process. Everyone, Jeff came in, I think the budget was already set when you came in last year. Mario, of course, came in September, and Dan and Andy came in here just in February. So, they've been learning as they go. Once again, our finance director has been helping them get through it. So, certainly they, I think, would look forward to learning as much from your perspective as hopefully you will from theirs.
Could we just take a couple of minutes?
Could you introduce yourself and maybe tell us what your background is, where you came from, and
Oh, certainly.
just an introduction to the people out here too.
Sure. For the record, my name is Andy Crar. I am the new town engineer. I came from working in private practice for approximately 19 years. I began my career working in the construction field, building bridges, dams, sewer pump stations. I spent a lot of time land surveying during my younger years. Then I moved on to working for consulting engineers, where I did a lot of design for land development projects, traffic engineering, and design of sewer systems, water systems for residential neighborhoods for the most part. And now I'm working for the town of Long Meadow as the town engineer, and I'm getting accustomed to the job, enjoying it. As far as my educational background, I graduated from the University of Hartford back exactly 20 years ago, civil engineering. I also graduated from UConn with a degree in, a master's degree in civil engineering. My concentration was traffic, transportation, and urban planning. And in about 3 months, I'll be graduating from UHart once again with my degree in mechanical engineering.
Good.
I live in Suffield, married with two sons.
Great.
And I'd be happy to answer.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you for joining the team. And some of the credentials you've just laid out, we can definitely use them.
Thank you.
My name is Dan McCarthy. Dan McCarthy.
Yeah, like that.
My background is I'm from maintenance facilities. I oversaw the building maintenance department at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst for about 20 years. Before that, I did all the maintenance security at Hampshire County Courthouse. And before that, I was a licensed refrigeration mechanic, HVAC tech. So I worked my way up the ranks through HVAC, building controls, building automations, building systems. From Palmer, married, got two daughters.
Great. You're assembling, Stephen's assembling quite a team. It's it's all new faces except for the old man in the crew, Pete. So you've had an entire management and engineering swap down there. So it's exciting to start out with a new team. Thank you.
McCarthy, I'm sorry, what was your title?
I'm a facilities director here.
Any of the board members have any questions? Okay, thank you. All right. Who's going to start? You got your question, start.
Well, I assume we start at page 7?
Yep.
Right?
So I'm starting.
We start at page 2, you're going to be a little confused.
Yeah, well, that's why I want to double check.
All right. Marie, do you have any questions?
Excellent. No, my questions are sort of a wrap-up question, so
Okay.
people could dig in the budget, and then I'm going to ask
Mark, do you have any
a general
questions?
question.
No, I'm just kidding. I just have a couple of questions, and they're not really significant questions. I think the biggest one that struck me is there was a catch basin cleaning line item that changed noticeably, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mark?
It's page 7, it's other property-related services, catch basin cleaning,
Which page number?
page 7.
Page 7, okay.
About halfway down. Catch basin cleaning is up about, well, it's a high percentage, 55%, but I guess the question is are we doing it a different way? Are we doing it a different frequency? We just behind?
We're anticipating the new stormwater permit and some of the requirements that are going to be, that are going to come out of that, and it's going to require, I think, doing 25% of your catch basins a year. So we're anticipating that being released. I think they told us in April. So we're going to have that, hopefully, that money approved and in place for next year, so that way, when we have to do our reporting, we have the money for our guys to do the work.
And this is a state mandated?
It is a state mandate.
Okay, so the question is?
Yeah, it might be.
It's a federal mandate.
Sorry.
Oh, okay, then we're off the hook. Okay. State mandates that are unfunded, we can go after the state funded mandates. Federal mandates,
Yeah, not so much.
We're stuck. Okay, that was one thing I had that I was concerned about. The other was that last year we undertook an initiative to try to rent large major equipment instead of buy it. I know it got deferred and kind of thing, but is that showing? And I guess if you could show me where's that expense shows here.
It's a couple lines below the one that we were just at on rental and leases.
Yeah.
Okay, you'll see that in FY16, that budget went up to $23,000. That reflects the change we made from prior years. We took money out of capital and we put it into the operating budget for those, so it's in that line item, Mark.
Okay, and I guess the question is, because we said we were going to look at it and evaluate it before we kind of continued that, are we anticipating this as an equal level of the second year rental of the same equipment, or is this to try to go out and do it again bigger and better?
So I would
You
say
follow
that
my question?
I do follow you.
Okay.
I think I follow your question, so I'll try to answer it, and if I don't, you let me know that.
Okay.
The feedback I've gotten is that the spreader body, and it's an insert that goes into the back of the truck, is too small. So for what we're used to, the driver may have to go out and come back 3 or 4 times, where the other drivers with their larger trucks only are out twice. So I would say that next year, if we're going to take this approach, we would try to get a truck with more capacity to spread. We did not have a heavy snow season, as you guys all know. So we didn't really get an ability to test that function of the truck.
Okay,
We
but
rented
the concept,
I'm sorry, we did rent
one
one.
vehicle for three months.
2 months.
2 months.
So my,
This is the plow truck we're talking
It's a plow
about?
truck
Okay.
with an insert in the back to spread.
The back, if I can, just the background was one of our large trucks was up for replacement in last year's capital plan. They're about $110,000, more than that,
175.
Yeah, 175. I guess we were carrying 175,000 for it, and
Yeah.
the suggestion was made to lease it, which I thought was a good suggestion. And so we did lease a truck. I don't think they offered a truck that big on lease.
We went with that size because we thought it would be our first time out, it would be a better fit to try that. And having looked at it, we would try to go with a bigger one next year with a little more lead time, but they are available.
Jeff McGowan didn't introduce himself, but I think he's been here before you guys before, our deputy director. So that's, Jeff's right, so we rented we leased a truck that was a little smaller, but that was because, and the other thing, in terms of the leasing for next year, I think we do want to look at different alternatives as we explore, and see what also needs to be replaced in the fleet. But right now, nothing major is called for replacement in the capital plan, which I sent to you guys, I believe, Tuesday.
Let me ask you one question.
What's the 25,000 represent?
That would represent 5 months.
For one truck?
Yes, it's about 5,000 a month.
That's not a good payback then. Because you can buy one that's going to last 10 to 15 years for 175.
Right.
So that's not a good payback.
If you use all 5 months, we only ended up using 2 this.
Yeah, the other avenue is too, it comes fully licensed and insured, you don't pay any insurance on it, there's no maintenance whatsoever.
Right.
And the maintenance over 15 years, I think if we did an analysis, would be very significant.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, it probably is a wash.
Yeah.
so, yeah, I guess, Jeff, is there a way we can
But the
look at
bond-
this
the
better
thing-
than
but the
kind
thing
of
that-
off the top of our...
But, we just returned the truck today, so we're just in the process of putting our information together to write a follow-up report.
Yeah, I think we did a lot of analysis, and we don't have it in front of us, but we did a lot of analysis last year, and we did see that on paper, it was favorable in the short term anyway, because the larger trucks don't get used as much during the summer.
Right.
But as Mario talked about with not only the pushing capacity of the plow, but also the spreading capacity for salt, that's why we have those bigger trucks, but they don't get used all the time. So that's why we looked at this, and it was more favorable. And the other thing is, next year it could be all 25,000 because it's 5,000 a month. Jeff held off on picking up the truck because we didn't really need it because we didn't have much snow in the fall, and then finally we said let's just get it and have it just to make sure because we don't want to get caught flat-footed on a big event. And now here we are in the beginning of March, and we had it for 2 months, and that was that. So this year it worked out real good.
This year for this size truck, we expended $6,650.
What's your availability?
How much advance notice do you have to get it set up?
About 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months. Yeah, so you have to either commit or not commit, don't you?
Right.
Yeah.
So we spent $6,600?
$6,650.
That's this year.
I mean, one reaction I have to this, you were saying you got the truck and you realized it's too small. I mean, I guess with the leasing, you have the flexibility to go get something different the next year.
Right.
Whereas if you buy, like if we had bought that truck, then we're kind of stuck with that problem for 10 or 15 years.
We wouldn't have bought the small one.
Right.
No.
Okay.
Well, we have a few of those that they bought years ago, and they don't work out. The issue is we put the truck on a route that was typically done by a backhoe. And it was much more effectively done with this truck. And they did have the ability, and it's a hilly section of town that runs along Long Meadow Street on the west side going south. And they had the ability, as they went around and plowed, when they finished up, to put a little bit of salt down on the hills and the things. So we got a little bit better service in the one section of town from this truck. And yes, we can tune it up as we go forward. And I personally want to see the report as we finish it out, too, to take a real look at the numbers and what it means. But the thing to remember as well, it may cost us the same, but we're always driving a brand-new truck. And it's somebody else's problem if the transmission falls out. It's not our $5,000 problem.
And that's a recommendation that we expect, or at least I expect, our town employees to make to us that, even if it costs us an extra $1,000 a year, it's so much better because we're going to, whatever you guys come up with, I think
Yep.
I just was, my basis today was, are we doing taking the right approach, and do we want to when do we want to take a look at it? Because a truck will come up again. It needs to come up.
I don't think we got the winter to
Okay.
I don't think we had the conditions that we would really need to make that judgment for like an ongoing multi-year policy approach. So I think we're going to continue it again this year and see what happens and see if we have a winter like we had last year, how it works out for us. Like I said, it was definitely worth doing this year. We're going to try it again, and if it turns out that it just is better to own the larger trucks and have them on hands, then we'll go back to that. But
So the follow-up question for Paul Sturzik, I guess for you too, Stephen, is, last year we took $170,000 or whatever out of capital, right? And so does it remain out of capital this year or not, or because there's no scheduled truck or no anticipated truck, it goes back in? In other words, we actually said
I think
we're not
you just
gonna-
reallocated that money.
we took it out of capital, put it else in.
Well,
into-
you probably added other capital that came up on the list, that
Yeah.
you took something that was number 9,
Yeah.
and now you're able to buy number 10.
But
You
But
spent it on
I
other.
thought we said we were going to take $5,000 less in capital and put it into our operating budget because it is tax revenue, so that
the lease price was not carried in the capital budget. The lease cost was not carried in the capital budget.
and it shouldn't be carried in the capital budget, but from our cost accounting, we should have put 6,600 or whatever less into the capital budget.
We did not do that. The capital is fully at your 2.5%.
Right, so our overall operating budget went up by, in this case.
It has absorbed it.
Right, which we probably shouldn't have had to do without a compensation in the capital side. I mean, if the idea is rent instead of buy, it's take what, it's not, and do them both and buy something else, I thought. That's what I thought we were doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just had a couple small
Oh, yeah,
questions.
yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah, so,
Ask away.
and, yeah, on page 7 here, it says GPS administration, and it has one figure of $20,000, and it has some zeros here. Just, I
So-
don't know what's going on with that line.
You might have to help me with this a little
Yeah.
bit, but as I understand it, this was units we were going to buy to put in our trucks,
Okay,
town trucks. So we knew where they were at any one particular time. So we carried that going, I carried it in my proposal
Requested, right.
requested, okay.
to the select town manager and CFO, and the zeros after represent that it did not get
Yeah.
funded. So,
Okay.
if I may, just a little bit,
Yeah.
I think the devices that we were thinking about in the beginning just track, maybe mileage, speed, things like that. I would change that a little bit going forward if I had the money, and maybe buy iPads where they could get cartograph in the truck in their work orders. They could, would have to develop that a little bit, but it could also do where they are and things like that. And the price might be a little different than what's asked for here, but going forward, I think you're going to see that again, and it just might be a different version of what you have in front of you today.
Okay, great, thank you.
That's what we get for bringing people in from Springfield. They come in with this iPad technology.
I said iPad. I should have said tablet.
Yeah, tablet, yeah.
I don't think it's
Now, the other thing is,
He's
I
got
just
no-
had a question about, there's a line item on page 8, pest control, and, with all the concerns about mosquitoes and, coming into this country and Zika, I mean,
So
we don't do anything for mosquitoes, we just do rodents, is that basically pest control?
I think we have in the past done some treatments for mosquitoes. I think they actually hired somebody, and no, actually I think DPW employees went to the catch basin and dropped a tablet in, and it was a 90-day slow release program.
Okay,
The health department, Beverly and I and Jeff had a meeting, and we discussed doing that again this year. I reached out to a private vendor to get a cost, and I haven't got that information yet, or else I'd share it with you. And then I have to do the research to figure out how much it's going to cost to have my guys get licensed so they can do it. And then we'll figure out which is the better way to go.
okay, great, thank you. Another thing is, I noticed and it says repairs and maintenance supply, and it went from 5,400 to zeros.
Where are you, Tom? Are you on 8?
That was
Yeah,
added into
on
another
page-
line item.
Yeah,
They
just
consolidated
another line
all that
item
stuff.
on page 8. And I was wondering what was going on with that. It just dropped off.
Where is this?
It says
Here's the consolidation of the two
repairs and maintenance
supply accounts.
supply.
Oh, right, so what we tried to do, if you look at the line above it, groundskeeping supplies,
Yeah,
we asked for 12,000, which is the 6 and the 5,
Oh, the 6
the
added
5.4. You know, our request was the 12, it ended up being just the 6, but that's why, you see the zeros there because we didn't ask for anything there, but we asked for it above.
and then, so the 5.4 below the 6 in
combined.
parentheses.
It was.
Means that that's going to be funded 100% or not? It's not funded, right?
Say that again, because I
So
didn't
the-
catch it.
At the end, after the 12,000 to the right, it says 6,000. Underneath it has 5.4
So
in parentheses, but that's not funded.
the 5.4 goes away,
Yeah, okay,
and we're going to get 6,
okay.
6,000.
So and the difference between those line items is repairs and maintenance that was cut out. What's the difference between the 5,000, the 6,000 figure and the 5.4 figure? What
What do we buy with those lines?
yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah,
Those are the Wounded Warrior, some of the supplies we use for, the race we have in November. Mosquito wasp spray, shop stock supplies, paint, some small tools, oil for equipment, miscellaneous things like that.
okay, all right, thank you. And then the other thing is I noticed that the uniform equipment expenses and personnel protective gear, they seem to have switched places too, right? So
Yeah,
that's
that happened in the 16 budget.
Yeah,
They went
very
from a,
before
they
that.
went from a kind of generic, have a shelf full of stuff, to issuing individual personal protective gear kits to each employee, and that's why that line item changed.
all right,
It was a net wash.
okay. That's about it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Questions about building maintenance?
Sure.
Can you just talk a little bit about the success or lack thereof? I see we're reallocating the school maintenance down specifically to into schools, but talk a little bit about our janitorial services and in-house contract. Any changes anticipated in those? I know we've made a couple of changes in buildings. Do we anticipate continuing to do that?
So, I mean, Dan's just new, and I think he has his
Whoever
own
wants to-
philosophy, and I don't know.
Been here 3 days, let's go.
He may wish to tell you about it, but I can tell you at least some of the budgeting
Yeah.
that I've done here was after kind of looking at the information that we've compiled over the last year, and to try to better budget each building as opposed to leave it at a small number, go over, and then just kind of feed it when we need it. So we kind of used the history that we had to try to get it closer to really what it should be as opposed to the other philosophy.
Yeah, this is something I think Chris Reed started this before he left. Tracking expenses per building in the line item budget. I mean, you can track expenses through munis per building, but this kind of gives you annually the expenditure trends in the line item budget, and so that way you know what the buildings are costing us. I think this will be important information to know as we look at building replacement. Right now, it's mostly the schools, but if we're tracking a certain amount of expenditures and these expenditure trends go up, it'll be clear here in the line item budgets. That's another reason why we've done this. In terms of janitorial, Mark, I think we made that adjustment that we needed to make last year by hiring a town employee to be the custodian at Greenwood. And honestly, I think it's been a pretty quiet year from the custodial side where we don't have anywhere near as many complaints from Temco, which is our current contract cleaner, because we did add a full-time guy out at Greenwood. So I think we've made that adjustment. Then the system we have.
But we're sticking with the contract for all the other buildings, I think, in this budget. For this budget, and at least this budget reflects that is a contract.
Yes.
And like I said, it's been working. We had a few bad years with that, but it's working a lot better now. So I don't anticipate changing that because it does keep our OPEB liability's low and our benefits line item's lower, so.
We went through the pain of doing it once,
Yeah.
and there's no sense doing it again.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
If I can follow up on this building, if I'm getting it, these line items for the various school buildings are up. This is more of an accounting point rather than an actual increase in expenditure?
Right, so if I could maybe illustrate, if you look at,
Service agreements.
where is it? I want to find it on,
FY16 and
all schools up for the negative
Right.
100,000.
Yeah,
So it's a reallocation of that line, and it doesn't add up one for one. It's
Got it.
actually a little more than that, but
Right.
that, we're taking the money, that was our catch-all line before this, this year,
okay.
but next year.
So this is a way of trying to more specifically allocate the
Yes,
costs?
exactly.
Okay.
And I think they couldn't do that in the past because they didn't have the history,
Got it.
which now we have a year's worth, and this is our first attempt at trying
Okay.
to.
So, yeah, I've got a couple other questions. So, going back to page 7, there's this reference to without supplements. What does that mean? Or-
When the budget instructions were sent out, we asked for level service.
Right.
And we further asked if they wanted anything above and beyond level service, that they give a supplemental budget.
Okay.
So basically, what you see before here is their level service budget in these particular line items. There might have been additional requests that are not reflected here.
Okay. Going to this $7,000 less for traffic control, what is that? Is that like traffic lights?
Traffic signals.
Yeah.
Traffic
Controllers,
signals. Okay.
poles.
We had one taken out today, and it's probably going to cost us $25,000.
Yeah, I was just asking about that. And then the next one, it refers to sidewalks. I'm assuming this is not buildings
So-
side, that would be a capital expense, right?
Well, it's funny you asked that, and that
Yeah.
was actually one of the things I asked for,
Okay.
we asked
All right.
for. So I came in, and I think you have a phenomenal capital project. I think, you guys dedicate plenty of money to that. But you, historically, I think, have gone just down both sides of the street, and those are the streets that get done. By and far, the biggest phone call, email, message I get from the residents is, I have a trip hazard, my sidewalk's falling apart. So what I was trying to do, what I asked, and that's why I put the increase in, is to have our guys go out and fix 5, 6 slabs in front of somebody's house to make that better for folks. And I was
Okay.
trying to fund it through this.
Okay. And, okay. All right.
So in essence, it'd be in both.
Mario, just an interesting point, there's an outfit that's constantly at MMA meetings that I'm sure you folks know about. They grind offset slabs so that we don't have the eyesore of blacktop on top, and it's
Yeah.
supposedly cheap. I assume they grind it so it's thin and then they crack, but.
Of course.
But, there are different ways of doing it, so I just thought.
I appreciate that, and I can tell you that may work in some places,
Well,
but
it's
there's some that are
offset
so
by 1/8
bad,
of an inch, but
they're
ours,
just,
the one in front of my house is offset by 3 inches,
yeah, so that's not going to work.
And we got amosite in there, which does the trick, but looks lousy.
And then on page 8, it says minus 29,000 from last year's budget for forestry. And could you just explain why we have a decrease?
I think that was more of a cut that Stephen and I had proposed in order to make this balance.
Okay, it's just sort of doing less.
But doing less, to try to get it to balance, it was an area that we had looked at. Understanding over the last couple of years after the
Right.
storm, we put in a lot of money towards that. And, if we can buy a year.
But how does that work practically, though? I mean, we have the same number of employees, right? I mean, it's our own people that are.
No, this is contracted.
Oh, this is Northern, okay, all right.
The other thing I'd add, Alex, is that Jeff is our tree warden. And he's been pretty aggressive in pursuing grants for forestry as well. And I don't know that we've received any awards yet, but the hope is that we'll receive some forestry grant awards to offset the reduction.
Okay.
If I could just add a piece to that too, and I knock on, I hope this is wood. The storm last week, bunch of folks out of power, trees down. East Long Meadow lost a whole intersection because a tree fell and took out their signals and cabinets. MEMA called and said, how is it in Long Meadow? We only had minimal.
Well, because they all went down in 2011.
Exactly, so there's some advantage to the money we've spent already. That's, I guess, was the point I was
I
trying to
mean,
get
I
to.
do believe there's a flattening of the arc in that line item over time, because it's been aggressively funded since 2011.
But part of
That's
that
fine. I'm not
was going to,
questioning.
the increase was going to be for planting and replacing, not just for trimming and cutting and
In
things
part,
like.
it does. We pay, when we
Okay,
plant
so-
trees,
We have, and Jeff could probably tell you exactly how many we put in.
Okay, so we're continuing that.
We're continuing, we're doing it in-house. And basically, you cut your costs by about 2/3. We
That's
purchased the
great.
trees, the grounds crew this fall, we did some installations, and we used an auger on the backhoe to drill a hole, and it works really well. And I see us doing a lot more of that as we go forward. The crew really got excited about it.
We're still missing a tree in front of my neighbor's house from 2011, so I'll call you and give you the address.
Your gov.
I mean, what is your policy on that? I mean, I'm just, my neighbor lost one a few years ago. We lost one, a few years ago, and I don't know, what kind of expectation could town residents have?
Well, at this point, we're working with the tree committee. We're trying to come up with a program that we can introduce to the residents of town on the replacement program. One of the most important part of when you replace a tree is that it gets watered. And what we're trying to do is work the program so that the resident will have a buy-in to take the responsibility to water that tree. If we have to water the trees that we plant, then it severely limits the number of trees that we can plant. And we're working with the tree committee. We expect within the next couple of months we will have a program that will come out that address that and get the residents involved with it.
I mean, do we have a program at this point?
Not really.
Okay, all right. With respect to we've probably spent more time talking about the Bliss tennis courts than anything else. But here's a question I have. This seems like a very specialized type of work. Is this something that we do in-house, and is it something that could be done contracted?
We contract it.
Oh, we do
We do
contract.
contract it. We
all
do
right.
have one.
Is that what you were asking?
No, I'm talking.
Clay courts.
We contract it. We have one employee who's part-time summer employee.
Bliss.
Who has the wherewithal to be able to maintain it throughout the summer.
So we have a part-time.
One part-time employee comes in for the summer, and he maintains the court on a part-time basis.
Okay, so that's
and
what you
he
mean
has
by
the
a
wherewithal.
contracted person.
No,
But-
we also, sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
He's not contracted, he's a part-time employee.
Okay.
Contractor comes in the fall, in the spring, preps the court, rolls it, gets it all set up, all the lines on there, and then that's fairly expensive. And then from that point on, the temporary summer employee takes care of it.
Brushes the lines, sweeps the clay to make sure it's
Right.
even.
Adds a little calcium chloride as needed.
And then also, if it's rain, he also opens the gate so people can go out and play. But if it's rain, he
keeps it locked.
makes the decision to not open. And I think this person has a tennis background, so they're very knowledgeable about clay tennis courts. So we had a couple situations where it was raining at 6:30 in the morning when he does the round, and then it dried up and it was a beautiful day and we got some feedback. But if the court is wet and people play on it, it damages the court, and that's why you have to give it like a full day to dry.
Okay.
That's just for a PSA, really, for those watching.
The next thing I had was where we had snow OT schools, and could you explain that a little bit, like why we have?
It's another one of ours.
Well, not why there's a reduction, but like why? I mean, and here's where I'm going with it. I mean, what if instead of paying overtime to have somebody, I assume to have somebody come in early, right,
exactly.
off their shift, what if we were to adjust their shift so for those months so that, they could come in, at the time?
Maybe. I think
The shift
you
is in the
would
contract.
lose that coverage in the afternoon, possibly.
You'd have to impact bargain that. The shift is, the work time is in the contract, is in the collective bargaining. So the work hours are set there.
So
That's the collective bargaining.
this is sort of the rigidity of union contracts we're dealing with. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had for questions.
Marie?
Going back to the tree, I know, is there a line item for tree planting?
It's
Because-
actually within the forestry line item.
Okay, so how much is been set aside? Because it was supposed to be a whole line item just for new tree planting. That was something the select board had voted on several years ago. So what is the amount that's set aside just for new trees? Or has it just been all thrown together?
It's been all thrown together.
Yeah, because I think we'll go back and look at the vote, but I think it was supposed to be pulled out.
Yeah, I recall that. I
Yeah.
can't explain what happened off the top of my head here, but I recall that also.
And then the other thing is, I know you talked about iPads, in-house planting, all of these innovative projects that you've been pulling in. We had a really tight budget this year, so you had to cut back on your budget. Was there programs you really were hoping to put in place, I guess for anyone here at the table, that you couldn't because we had to look at a very limited budget this year?
I will tell you, and I think it's not just budget, it's also that whole question about where's DPW going facility-wise. The fuel pumps are of an age and condition where they certainly need to be addressed, and I think we've been waiting to do that until we get the answer on what's going to happen with DPW. So much so that the program that runs it it works, but there's other programs that are out there that are better, that track things that would be useful for PM programs. It can be pushed into cartograph, none of which can happen until you make the investment of fixing the pumps.
That's capital though, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's just,
Some of it's even just buying the program.
Yeah.
I can't do, and it's not just budget, it's situational, I guess.
Anything
That's part
else
of
you
it.
were hoping to really put into, like you mentioned, iPads, anything else you were
Right, so that would have
liked to
been,
invest in?
obviously, it didn't come with this budget, it's not going to be in next year's. Growing the cartograph system to be able to do some of that stuff in the field. Again, you're going to see that again, and maybe I'll be successful next time around. And maybe I'll pass it on to Jeff and Pete, since they've been around a little longer. Are there things that you guys had hoped for that we weren't able to do?
Yeah, and Marie, you do realize asking DPW, is there any programs they like, is sort of like going by a candy store with a 4-year-old and say, did you see anything in there you'd like?
Well, we always say no before they even ask. And right now.
I commend you. I mean, you were pretty mild on your want.
Yes,
We say no after they ask. We give them the courtesy of the request before we deny it out.
Yeah, that Christmas list wasn't all
Hear
that
us out
long.
for a minute.
No.
And then,
But I think we make decisions and allocations, and I think the town should know what we've had to pull back on, because that would be a fabulous program. And what about security? Is there anything in regards to security, whether it's the pump station or something that we really did not invest in, that you wish we could have in the future?
well, again, I'm sorry.
I mean, for the pump stations, the 2 projects in the past 3 years for Forest Glen, which we are finishing up now, and then Emerson Road Pump Station, part of those, we put in full security systems as part of those projects. So, for on my budget, there was nothing else extra as far as what I asked for. One of the things, like Mario was saying, the GPS, for me, one of the features, especially for the jet truck, is, now some of the new jet trucks that they have out there, they're already built in, there are options built in where you can tell how much hose goes out, how much water's being used, as far as location. There's other things with that, but, for my point, like I said, a GPS, part of that was something I really wanted for the jet truck especially. It's a big piece of equipment, and it's a very important piece of equipment in our maintenance of our sewer collection system.
That's good to know.
Could you explain a little bit more, like what the GPS? I mean, a couple of years ago, we spent a lot of time talking about GPS. Could you sort of elaborate on, what that would do for you?
As far as for tracking, there's several things. Not only for water and sewer, but for the snow removal. A lot of these GPS units.
I thought, were you just asking, I'd be happy to jump in, but if it's water and sewer, was that what you were specifically looking for?
I think more generally.
For all departments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly think that snow operations you could see, and I don't know if this would ever get pushed to a public forum where residents could actually log on and see where the plow is in their neighborhood, so they can estimate when it's going to get done there. It's possible. Is that something as a policy we would want to get to, we'll discuss that, I guess, but it's great to know sometimes where they are, speed, if they've been in the right place, wrong place, things like that. I get more value from adding it with other devices, as I mentioned earlier. So that would be better money, better spent, in my opinion.
The iPads.
Tablets, sure.
Right. I mean, because one of the things that we ran into when we discussed this before was that the union contract doesn't allow us to
we would have to
actually
negotiate
do
it.
anything about it.
You're right about that.
Yeah.
Do you have plans to negotiate that out? I mean, that's the first step anyway.
Yeah, the current contract expires June 30th. That's something I'm sure we're going to take up
Yeah,
when we negotiate with them.
you need to have that in this year. Get that done. Because the GPS is not that much money, but it's the other side, getting the union approval and all, and making sure you can put them in. And
I think the two discussions were fascinating because I never saw GPS really communication with the resident and the department, and then you talked about the correct use of a truck and how to more efficiently use your truck by using the GPS and all the parts on the sewer truck, unless I misunderstood, which are aspects of GPS we never really thought about or discussed here as a board. So that was really very interesting. I was wondering about, we talked about leases of cars. Are there any other programs that you would consider in regards to whether using leasing services or outsourcing or insourcing that you would consider that right now we're contracting out that you'd want to bring back in or increase contracts?
I touched upon the sidewalk program that I'd like to get off the ground. From talking to these guys, we have the tools and the skill, expertise in-house to do that, so it's just paying for the concrete. I'd like to think that we can do it better, cheaper, faster, but I'd like to have at least a trial at it to get those numbers to say I was right, or at least present to you and say, here's what I found, and hopefully I'm right, but if I'm not, then obviously we try something else.
And that's the type of pilot programs I was interested in hearing about, so that was great. Thank you.
Stephen, do you have to?
Yeah, I have to leave in a minute here. Is there any questions directly for me from the board?
The only question I had, I asked this Stephen last year. I don't see a training budget in your budget, and I'm always concerned that there's not a training budget.
I think there is not, but we do send our guys, myself included, to different, like American Public Works Association, Bay State Roads, Maya. Some of them are free, some of them are minimal, and we end up paying for it out of other lines.
And I also understand the first thing that people go when they cut budgets is training too. So I don't blame you for really not showing it. I just really like to make sure it's taking place, I guess.
It could be more.
Yeah.
So you're right about that.
And we talked a lot in terms of like stuff that we gave up. One of the things we really wanted to do was beef up our construction inspection capacity for managing our capital projects.
Right.
And it's just something we couldn't do because it's, you have to really add a benefited position to really do that effectively, and it's something we really struggle with. And we're going to keep, if we can find a different way to get to it, we'll keep working on it. But in terms of expanding our budget to add the position, it wasn't doable this year.
And you've assembled a whole new team now, and next year may be a whole different budget. You may be in there with some requests that hadn't even been thought of yet.
Yep.
Actually, I have one for you, Stephen. You put together a great safety program and equipment. With the cuts in the budget, did you have to pull back on that safety program, or is it still being able to run to the extension?
No, I don't know if the safety committee still regularly meets. I know it's,
We're just about to reactivate the safety committee and start to move some of that forward, but at this point, with the personal protective gear funding, we're in good shape to fund that, what we need to be doing and how we need to be doing it.
Yeah, I think a note on safety was, there was some transitions of positions and things that I think kind of hurt the continuity of that. But I would say the concentration on safety has not, I would not say has ebbed. I don't think we've had, and I shouldn't say it out loud about our injury history because I don't want to jinx it, but we've had a pretty good track record. Obviously, the incident we had in Hazardville Road, it wasn't our team, but it's certainly everyone that works at the DPW was impacted by that deeply, and to affirm for everybody how important safety is. So if nothing else, that was a stark reminder.
I had one more quick thing, and then I'll give it to you, Mark. I'm very, very sensitive to vehicles being beat up and a lack of accountability.
You and me both.
We got a whole new team here. I would really like to see this new team take a really close look at how we do business.
Well, part of the safety committee review, in my mind, is accident review.
You board a survey?
And it's kind of a peer review.
Mhm.
And we did it in West Springfield, and we actually found that the peers were a little more stringent on their peers than the management.
Right.
And I think you'll find that it's going to be it's going to take care of a lot of it. I will tell you that based upon previous places I've worked, we don't have the level of that kind of thing that I've seen elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I'm gonna echo Jeff's sentiments. Springfield had the same. We had an accident review committee, and I found the same thing, that the employees were harder on each other than management was on the employees. So I suspect that. And in my short time here, I haven't found that there's been a lot of abuse.
No, I just didn't say abuse.
No,
I didn't say abuse. I'm talking about, I would envision being able to go down to DPW director and go out to a vehicle and it's got a caved-in fender, and I say, can you show me the accident report on that? That's the accountability part I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And how you implement and what you do after, as far as what you get into, whether you got an employee that keeps beating up vehicles, that's the personnel issue, but just the program integrity, because the fleet is so terribly expensive.
Yes, it is.
You guys know it. We're preaching to the choir.
When the mechanics report to me the vehicle's been damaged, that's my first question. Where's the accident report?
Right.
And I require one to be filled out by whoever's the party.
You have a board of survey that you're working with now too, where you're actually doing a review on the accidents?
Well, that's part of the safety committee. We'll be doing part of the review of the accidents with them.
Okay, good. Sounds like we're heading in the right direction then.
Yep.
Thank you. That's all I have. Yeah.
I just have a couple more questions. One is, Paul, I think you commented about this, because we've got it primarily in DPW, we see it in police and fire also. The fuel costs are now signed, locked in, and so we're good with those, because they are a substantial reduction.
Probably about a month ago at 30% less than we're currently.
And we're presuming the same number of gallons, I mean.
Right,
compared-
same assumption of the gallonage.
Okay, so, because the numbers are dramatic, I mean, across the board, that's giving us quite a relief this year.
It's quite a relief in going through this budget, yes it did.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're comfortable with it. The other thing is, I just want to make a comment that, Paul, I had asked for, and you'd sent me the distribution of the entire DPW, I also got the percentages, which is great. And I think it's great. For me, it gives a lot more of the details of splitting it up. And for people who don't know what this is, we looked at the entire DPW budget and then split it into, and actually I had forgotten one of the sub-departments, which is sanitation and recycling. So it splits all the DPW's costs into administration and streets, grounds maintenance, building maintenance, sanitation and recycle, water and sewer, and it's been very, very helpful. No good deed goes unpunished. We have a new team here. Is it appropriate at some point to take a look at that distribution, given a new team with new assignments and new?
Mario had approached me in this whole budget process. I just put him on hold because it was the third year.
Right.
We were going through a 3-year transition. I said, let's get through this, and then we could come up with get another study or something to that.
Well, I thought it was very cumbersome, the percentages, and I understand there's methodology behind it to get to that, and I can respect that. It made it very difficult for me to do budgeting going forward. So I said, what's the history? And Paul explained it, but I said, is there any appetite to maybe adjust that in the future? And as Paul just said to you, he goes, let's get through this year.
I mean, my personal opinion is I think there should be an appetite for it, given the reorganization of the department and the new people there. Just from my perspective, the history was it was so out of whack, Mario, that we needed to do something different. It was literally very, very arbitrary, as opposed to going to you and saying, so what do you think, and how would you assess your time based on what you do. I think it was literally done by the finance committee originally or something like that.
It was a request of the audit committee.
Oh, okay,
and
so, right,
and
okay.
that's kind of how it started, and then
Right.
the actual study was done internally within the
Well,
department.
that got us where we are now, was
Right.
done by an internal study. But prior to that, it was,
Right, I think prior to that, it was more of even things prior to the charter change, those allocations, because there were certain times originally that the director wasn't charged anything to facilities, because that came over a lot from the school department, and the grounds was built all into one, so it gradually segregated to where it is today. So,
yeah, all right, I just thought I'd comment on, look, but it's very good the way it is. For me, at least, it's very useful.
Employee recognition program.
So from time to time, it's there's not a formal policy, but from time to time, from Select Board, from residents, I get emails or letters or such saying, hey, so-and-so did a great job. Or they don't know who they are, but at one particular point, there was a picture of one of our employees working in the street. It sent it to me. At the time, I didn't know who it was either. We identified it, and we made a big deal about it. You know, hey, look at so-and-so. You know, your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. And that's more or less what it is.
But how about an actual incentive program, though?
Meaning, do you have something specific?
Yeah,
I'd like to.
Meaning a
Collective
bonus.
bargaining call.
Yeah, that would be great.
No, I don't do collective bargaining. This is an incentive award program.
I'm not afraid to say that during the transition.
I've never seen a union yet that fights giving more money to the employees.
With with the absence of a town engineer and for a shorter period of time a facilities director, I had some great people step up. And I'm not saying we got everything done that we would have got done before, but nothing really broke to the point where I don't think any of you were notified that, it was an emergency. So those people deserve more than, thank you. There's no mechanism in fairness to make that happen. I'm open to it, though. So if there's a way that you guys, or ideas that you guys have to do something like that, I'm with you.
That's an unfunded program right there, Marie.
Yeah.
That and training is two things that are overlooked quite often, especially in the blue-collar workforce. Very easy to overlook them.
Yeah.
And they're just as much needed as any other department. Okay. Well, that's good. I'm glad I asked the question then. Any other question? Yeah.
You had mentioned just a minute ago that, with the training, that you can get money from other line items, and I guess I didn't understand that we had the ability to do that.
I can address that. The way that the budget is done, it has all the detail in the line items, but if you recall, when we go to town meeting, we will actually vote on a general government line item, as an example, of $1.5 million.
Right.
So that is the appropriation, and that is the legal amount that we can spend for general government. All that really, it's almost like the school department budget. So all that information or all those line items above that you see here, we've written a policy that we can make changes to those with the approval of the town manager. So within the DPW department, per se, he cannot go between funds, between water and sewer.
Right.
But he can go within his general fund highway department, or general fund DPW, I should say.
Ground.
If he had extra money in highway, with the approval of the town manager, he would be able to transfer that highway money into grounds or town buildings or however. Because the appropriation level is DPW general fund, $3 million.
Okay, the unit, the schools, I understand, have a great deal of flexibility. So their unit is the whole school department, right?
Mm-hmm.
For the town side, it's the department level.
It's not even the department level, because again, general government is, or let's say take the DPW,
minus
he has
the
3
enterprise
departments
Right,
in the
I
DPW.
get that part.
But
So-
Alex, for example, public safety is police and fire. They're lumped together. So you'll see in the town warrant, we do break it down by, I think, health and safety is one, or human services is one.
Human services one, there's about 6
Which
different.
includes, the adult center and the health department, and I think Park and Rec is under there, I'm not sure.
Well,
But
All right.
so there's,
So I guess, how common then, so we go through, we pour over this, on line item by line item. How much does the actuality of the spending get jumbled up compared to what's laid out in the budget.
I mean, that's, the expenditure, we always try to tell people, put the expenditure in the correct spot and make the transfer. So the expenditure history that you see before you, the 3-year history,
Right.
are the actual amount spent on those line items. Does it get jumbled up at times? I mean, it does, because, certain years, certain things happen, and you have to
Right.
make movement.
Right.
And very quickly, where you have the solid lines where it's highlighted on the detail, that's basically the appropriation level. Like if you look on the bottom of page 3, Alex, this is just a quick example.
Yeah, hold
Bottom
on.
of page 3, that's just one appropriation level, and we can move line items, all the line items on page 1, 2, and 3, we can move those around, the
Right.
budgetary amounts. One of the reasons why we actually did this, because we were appropriating before that at every line item level, and that did not allow any flexibility within the department. So if you had $500 for supplies, and you
Right.
needed 600, you had to go to the finance committee for that extra $100.
Right.
Which was kind of ridiculous
Right.
to do that. So it gave us a lot of flexibility. It also gave us, at that point in time, because of that flexibility, we were actually able to trim budgets because we didn't have to fund every line item at the maximum estimate.
Like worst case scenario.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we were able to trim a lot of the budget just based upon that flexibility now offered.
Now, my understanding that the school department's ability to have a greater ability to move money around line items is a creature of state law, whereas
Yes.
we're constrained by state law. So
Well,
what?
we're constrained by state law, and the state law is going to say where there is an appropriation, that's where.
I see.
But our appropriation is for general government. Our appropriation isn't for supplies in the town accountant's office and the town accountant's salary. It's for general government. That's the
So
appropriation.
if we chose to, we could have something as wide open as the school department, if that's how
Sure,
we appropriate
We could
it.
have school, non-school.
Right. Okay.
So Alex, if you recall, at least when first 25 town meetings I went to, the motion on town meeting was, I move to approve lines 1 through 37. And then it was, out-of-state travel was always a separate appropriation,
Yep.
right, Paul? And
Right, that was a
approval.
separate law,
And then
yeah.
you do lines, 39 through 82, and you literally went through the whole budget for hundreds of line items, and they do it in sections by department. We don't do that anymore. Now we say, by,
Right.
and it's not even by what we call departments, it's, we agglomerate
By
departments.
function now, more than anything.
Right.
General government,
And
public
that
safety,
changed
school.
around the time of the charter change.
Exactly. Robin actually brought that in when she came in as the next town manager.
Well, Richard, I can see you're ready to.
No, I'm just consolidating my
Clean up, but I did want to ask one other question for our tree warden. Is there any grants to protect our older trees? I mean, because a lot of them are, they're maybe cut off by sidewalks, and, the town probably isn't going to want to build a sidewalk to protect the root systems, but are there grants for stuff like that?
Not really. Most of your grants are for replacement trees.
Replacement stuff?
Yeah.
All right.
And we're working with tree committee. We actually are about 2/3 done now with the tree inventory.
Mhm.
And we did complete all of Long Meadow Street, and actually showed them a map of all the trees, and it gives you a good flavor on the condition of those trees. Most of those trees are in the 5 to 10 years of basically aging out and being in need of removal.
Yeah.
So one of the programs we would be thinking about grants is to start a replacement program before those trees are removed, so we start to develop a replacement forest.
Yeah, I have a good friend who has an oak tree behind his house. It's about 500 years old.
Yeah.
The biggest thing you ever can imagine. What's the oldest tree in our town? Do you know?
I don't know.
Anybody have any idea of the biggest?
Haven't had a chance to find that one yet.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Mark?
Yeah, I don't have any more questions. I just want to make a comment. I've been doing this now a few years, and I want to thank you folks that you've put together an impressive presentation this evening, impressive budget, and I'm really looking forward to what the DPW is going to be doing for us. I think it really does represent a new era of the DPW in this town, and you folks have put on a good appearance for the town tonight, and I want to thank you on behalf of the town.
Thank you.
Thank you, because I've been the toughest critic in the past, or one of the toughest critics.
And I whispered to Mark's ear when when off mic, and I said, it's a whole new era. It's very evident it's a new era with the team that's been assembled, so it is nice to see. So, and I guess now we have to start supporting the new era. Okay. Any other questions for any members? Thank you guys for all coming in. Paul?
I would just ask, from an agenda standpoint, you're scheduled to be Friday?
No, Paul, we're going to continue a little bit.
You're not
excused, buddy.
Where do you think you're going?
We're
done with you folks.
letting DPW go home.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Lights don't go up for 2 more hours, Jeff.
Yeah, you might know those. Tried.
You didn't move fast enough.
Paul said a quick wrap-up.
I should have just walked out with them, that's all.
You should have.
Should have just walked out. Yeah, you wouldn't have even noticed I was gone.
You had to mess around with that agenda stuff, didn't you, Paul? Actually, Paul, I'm not sure how much where we're going to go, because I think now it's time for the group to regroup up here, too, and to talk about what we do want to see Friday.
Right.
We didn't get a chance to share that with Stephen, so I think it's time for us to, we've had the largest department in now, and see what the flavor is. Marie, what's your say? What do you want to see for Friday?
Whatever's, doesn't matter to me. Whatever groups they're ready. Depends on their schedule.
Well, Richard?
Yes.
We still haven't heard from Capital Planning Committee.
Right.
And so where do you think that's going to fit in?
They're late. Oh, it'll be coming in. We're not going to approve the budget till 20.
No, I understand. I'm just asking the question because I'd like to hear from at least Mario when we're looking at the specific capital items.
Right.
I mean, so I take it that would be after Friday?
Yeah, it will be, Alex. We'll
Okay.
we'll
All right.
get them in.
Yeah, I'm not
Steven's
worried about it getting it in.
Yeah, Steven's
but,
trying to get the final report from Dr. Metz right now and get that
Okay.
in. And
All right.
It'll be at one sole meeting where like you just go over
All
the
right.
capital and the community preservation.
But he'll be here to talk about it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Didn't I get that from?
Yeah, they've got it out. We just don't have
I
it.
met with him a few times. He had questions, like you guys have questions about our requests, and I'm not exactly sure where he landed on our request, which ones made it, which ones didn't. And maybe he's not done with that process, but
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think
happy
he's not put in his completed report yet.
okay.
And with Steven's, has it been in yet?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it yet, so we're tracking it down.
And I was
What was it we got? I was
sticking around to see
That was what was sent out, and that was an interim paper, but it wasn't the finished report from Dr. Metz.
I was just hoping to hear what the plan was for Friday, to know if DPW's involved or not.
No, I don't think.
I don't think it'll be on
Yeah.
Friday.
All right.
Yeah, I don't
Thank
think
you.
so. Yeah.
What I will do is I will update these, so you have, let's call it Stevens revised budget with those, so we'll have a balanced budget with the full school committee request in there per se. And I'll just highlight those line items that I changed in yellow, so to be easily identifiable.
Is there any other changes you wanted, Mark, on the presentation?
No, what I was asking for is no changes to the presentation. The numbers can change, but I gotta say, Paul, and it's not fair with Stephen not here, I was absolutely baffled by that one-page sheet. And I expressed it earlier, I just didn't get it. And
I understand. I mean, we
I now understand
we went over it, and I kept on telling him, this has to reconcile. This has to reconcile to something coming back, and it wasn't straightforward, that, but again, it was simply adding the 308,000 in those couple line items, and, in the end, it was straightened out, but I understood the confusion.
Yeah, I guess you talk about Friday, Richard, to me, one of the next areas that concern me is public safety, and I know it's a tough task to come in here on Friday night, and I don't know if they can, but those are some of the areas that I think may have some of the potential impacts on at least my thought process on this.
Fine, we can bring public
As
safety in.
opposed to Parks and Rec or the library.
Right.
The only question I also would ask is that, and I'm going back to, there's an agreement way back when the town of Longmeadow accepted the library building as a town building, that the library budget needed to be voted on by the trustees of the library. I would assume that we can get a note or something that says that they've seen it and voted on it. because in theory, the library budget, I wouldn't say in theory, by agreement, the library budget has equivalent autonomy to the school system in terms of presenting a budget to the town meeting as individual budgets. And I don't know, Tom, if you were aware of that, but I could share with you the agreement. It's a ridiculously complex kind of thing. But that's just a kind of a paperwork thing we ought to follow up on.
Okay, now what, yes, Mary?
And I was just thinking, well, we sort of divide the budget by, what is it? There's public safety, and then the other is the catch-all, what's it called? Services, social services,
Yeah.
where we have them all come in at once, so I hate to keep, bringing in the groups. It'd be nice to have the COA and the library and Parks and Rec all together.
Yeah,
at
I
one
think we
meeting.
will. We'll bring in public safety next, and that'll be police and fire.
The question is, can we do two, one for
I
now and
think
one for another? Because
Oh, the other
the other one
thing
is
is-
planning and community development, and that's a separate item. and I don't
You would
even know.
really want planning and community development? I don't know.
Yeah,
Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, the other thing, if you do public safety very quickly, you also go through general government, because Stephen and I will be.
Okay.
Right.
Maybe those are the two.
I mean, I get that, but that you can fill at any time, because we'll be here for all those meetings
Okay.
anyway.
Right.
Let's do that.
Okay, another question we need to throw back on the table. My understanding of the process, and we had a brief discussion when we first started the meeting, is our town manager does the budget, gives it to us, and we approve the budget or modify as we see appropriate. I consider part of his obligation to try to give us a balanced budget and to try to work through the process of balancing the budget, but I'm not sure that my feelings echo everybody else's up here as far as his role and function in dealing with the school issue. I certainly have no problem with what he's attempting to do, because it's still in an informal phase and it's not proved for anybody. But I think we need to kind of share our feelings on this, because are we telling him to stand down and stand still in the water, or are we telling him to proceed?
Well, but a lot of that depends upon, our acceptance of the compromises to select board policies on spending items, those being OPEB, capital, and taxes. I mean, it almost all comes down to that. The rest of the stuff is, pardon the expression, it's pocket change. I mean, I'm going to give each department a kind of a once through, make sure we understand what they're doing. But anything that's done, any offset can be balanced by saying, well, we just won't do any capital projects this year, or we won't invest in our OPEB budget. And the question is, and that's why when we had a resident this evening start our meeting by giving us a very eloquent discussion about how important full-day kindergarten is, my comment was, but is it more important than some of the other priorities? I'm not saying it's not important, but, and I go back, and I've said this before, and I apologize to people who've heard this before, but when I was on the capital planning committee, we only had a certain number of dollars, and we didn't have much, and the two items were redo the swimming pool or buy a Jaws of Life. And Richard, I know you've heard me say this before. The Jaws, and they were the exact same amount of money to repair the filter in the swimming pool and buy a Jaws of Life. And the answer was, the Jaws of Life might only be used once every 3 years, but ours wasn't working. On the other hand, we had a swimming pool that was being used by hundreds of children every summer, and it wasn't working, and it had to be shut down. Neither was argued that it wasn't necessary, but we didn't have enough money to pay for both. And the tough call was actually that, just so everybody knows, was the Jaws of Life. But it's a tough call, and just like now, our call is, do we continue our capital planning, and do we help put relief into our OPEB programs so that we can, so that we can get better bond ratings and not turn Long Meadow long-term into a town that's got an overwhelming debt, or long-term obligation? Or do we say, no, we're going to put all that on hold because there's 145 children who we ought to be financing to go to all-day kindergarten? And I'm not saying neither is important, but one is more important than the other, and we're getting paid the big bucks to decide, or at least assess.
I think you meant to say that they were very important. You said that neither of them was important.
No, I'm
But you
sorry.
meant
both-
neither of them
both-
was unimportant.
Both are
Okay.
very important.
I wanted to clarify that, because that was going to be headlines in the morning.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Marie.
Both are equally important, but we've got to figure that out.
Yeah.
I think you can't have it all.
Okay,
Well,
go ahead.
I think that's the whole meaning of budgeting. Budgeting means you have to make compromises within the budget. I feel that one of the most important things to do is that we bring to the town a balanced budget. I think that is number one. I think we have various policies that we've been working on over the years. One is that we don't use free cash for reoccurring expenses. I think we've moved away from that. I think we put policies into place to help build our capital funds. We're going in the right direction. You know how passionate I am about OPEB and funding our retiree health plan. I feel that it's really important to do the capital. We put those policies in place. We're moving in that direction. We're not going to hit our targets this year. I believe I'm willing to accept that compromise because I feel we're going in the right direction and we're starting to have a general discussion as a group. I think the school committees come to us and they've talked to us about many initiatives they want to keep going. And they've listed their priorities. And I think the past few years, they really have worked with us to hold back on their budget. They've gone and they've fought on the floor for a compromised budget. I think we're doing in the process what we've been doing in the past few years, which is sitting down with the schools and trying to work together on a compromised budget. And so I personally think that we've been able to do some cuts. They're painful, but we're still moving in the right direction of dealing with our policies. So I'm willing to continue negotiations on a compromised budget, and I think 150 is a reasonable amount to start working on and seeing if we can make movement. Every year we seem to do this differently. Sometimes we work on the compromised budget before they vote on it and before we really vote on ours. Sometimes we
That's the way it should have been done.
Yeah, and some years it ended up being afterwards, where we both voted on a
nothing would be
budget,
approved by
and then we
any
had to
team.
have a subcommittee, do you remember
there's a
that?
lot of skin in
And
it.
we worked on that. And then the years I feel it was a failure is when we ended up on the floor and we were screaming at each other. And that's not where I want us to be. I think that the schools have been working on trying to keep their budget. They're trying to look at cuts. I think the town manager and Paul, you've done a phenomenal job. And our budget's really cut this year. I've never seen
$76,000 less in the
Yeah.
operations of that's what we're told,
tremendously
than it was last year.
And you know what? We would have been fine if we didn't get hit by this. But of course, last year it was the pension. Remember, the pension was like over $300,000 we got hit. This year we're getting hit with the health insurance. Every year it's going to be something. And I think the number one thing is we should look to always sit down and try to reasonably talk it out, because we're elected as two boards to put on our big boy and girl pants and sit down and get the work done, which is working together.
So are you advocating that we put together the Senate House subcommittees to go out and
No, I
come back
think
with-
if we're happy with the 150,000, that's our first thing. Have them go back and look at their budget. Every budget has room and priorities that have made. So I
But
would
where did
say
the 150,000 come from? It was an arbitrary.
no. It was all day of working on cutting it back. That's what my
I'm looking at my
understanding
notes here, and the $150,000. Look, let's go back to where we were 2 hours ago. We now have a $220,000 difference between if the school gets everything they want and we get everything we want. There's $220,000. And I do that. It's because it was 308.
Yeah,
Everything we budgeted for.
The cuts there that
There's
We
a
put
lot
down
of cuts.
everything.
We
If we
legally
take the
walked
budget
in.
that we were presented last Monday night.
Right, there you go.
From the town manager's adjustments, okay? And the budget that the school department presented to us last Monday night, the difference on a $65 million budget is $220,000.
With the health insurance.
With the health
adjustment, yeah.
insurance adjustment, that's the 308 plus 12,000
Yep.
for the plus
Yep.
tennis courts minus $100,000. That's $220,000 difference. And so how that $220,000 is, if you will, divided between, how between the school side of the budget and the general government side of the budget, I think is somewhat arbitrary.
Well,
Well,
then,
I think the way it happened is he reverted back to your initiatives to move OPEB from .5 to .75.
Right, so just
he
looking
went
back to where they were
Right,
last
And
year.
the same with capital. He just went back to the same percentages as FY16, and then the difference is about the 150.
Okay, so both the OPEB and capital essentially reflect no change from the prior year.
That is correct.
Okay, so they weren't necessarily arbitrary. And I come back to a comment I made, I think it was Monday night, when I said, we're being told that of our expenditures for the kindergarten, in 2018, $100,000 of that comes back to us through increased state aid. So we might say, and this goes to your comment, we're not going to spend, non-recurring money for recurring expenses, but $100,000 of that 220 is not recurring expenses. It's a one-time expense. It's basically a startup cost of part of the all-day kindergarten is. So let's find another source of income for that $100,000. Now we're off by 220, we're off by 120, and my preference would say the school department, you've got $35 million. Can you find $120,000?
Because are you really talking a $30,000 difference from the original request of $150 for them to find? You're saying the school should go find $130, and that's the number you'd be comfortable with.
Right, but
Okay.
what it does do is allows us to better fund OPEB and capital. I mean,
I see what you're saying, but the issue of what to go back to the school with is, instead of 150, you're suggesting the 130,
Well, I'm
and
saying
then
it's-
taking the 100 for the reimbursement.
well, if you're
for
going to
free
put words in my
cash.
mouth, let me use my own
Yeah.
words, which is, I go back to the school and say, you've got a $220,000 issue, why don't you go find $220,000, and oh, by the way, we'll help you find the first 100,000, because that's not recurring money.
Okay.
We'll find that out of
Well-
one of our other funds that doesn't reoccur.
Didn't you already take free cash, use free cash in some way on this budget?
Not at all.
We didn't, okay.
Free cash use. What I
I'm not
will say
necessarily suggesting it's
is that
free
for
cash.
those who read the morning paper, the legislature is looking to add money into the governor's budget for Chapter 70 money. They historically have always increased the governor's line item in Chapter 70. We're currently, I think we got $20 per pupil in the governor's budget proposal for state aid. They're looking to raise it to $50, which would be an additional $75,000 if the legislature puts it through. So if you want to gamble, we could put that in. It's something for folks to consider.
Well,
But I just have another question. But Paul, usually when you look at, trying to cut back on budgets, wouldn't you look at departments and look at the expenses, for each department, and then, give a percentage for each department? I mean,
No.
no.
We don't do that because there are certain departments that are able to absorb certain things. I mean, when we look at the cuts that were made to the DPW or to the police and fire, those were using fuel at a 30% knockdown in their budget because we locked in at a 30% less price. So we didn't try to say everyone's going to get a 5% decrease. We basically looked at it and said, where can we move it? The community development, planning community development, we hardly even touched it because they don't have anything to touch. So we can't really ask them for a 5% cut. There's nothing there to cut. So we do not do that. And that's something I've always told Stephen, it's really not a fair thing to do in that fashion. We looked at almost every individual line item, looked at the trends, looked at the current year expenditures, and that's how we kind of made a lot of those cuts. Based upon the fact that, just because you got 20,000 last year doesn't necessarily mean 20,000 next year is needed.
Okay, so as you, size up the budget and you have this figure of 150,000, then it just goes to that area, it goes to the school board, and then they would have to look at.
Basically, the recommendation would be
Make that decision. It's not really our
we wouldn't, they have the autonomy to do what they want, so we would never recommend any specific line item per se in their budget, but we would just recommend that their budget not be appropriated at an amount 150 less than they approved. And it really, you put the onus on them to, set their own priorities.
And if I could just, Tom, point out that prior to Monday, we talked about, we're going to go back to the $308,000 offset that we had Monday. But the town manager had already taken, I believe, $280,000 out of the select board's initiatives. And so if you want to think of it a different way, that 308,000 was really 588,000,
Yeah.
which he apportioned 280,000 to us already. So the general government, or select board as part of the budget, already got apportioned a pretty good, and I agree with Paul, we shouldn't do it by just proportionally, but even if you think we should, we already took a $280,000 hit from where we want it to be, and the suggestion is, should the school committee be asked to take an equivalent hit from where they want it to be, and oh, by the way, they got 65% of the budget, and we're only asking them to take 50% of the initial hit.
But of course, Mark, part of what they presented was that they had made painful cuts before coming to approving their budget. And see, this is the problem, those are kind of invisible, to us.
It's over our $79,000.
And I know, I mean, but understand, that, and that comes,
You're right.
Each person has their own perspective. It's like, look, I've cut to the bone already, and you're asking me more.
Right.
And I think each board kind of has that own perspective, and I think there's truth to both sides.
Fair enough, Alex, you're
I
right.
don't think there's anything wrong with asking, and as Mark says, there's ways that they can actually look at it, and there might be changes, and every time you sit down and look at it, there's different things you see, and we'll see what the school committee comes back with. Maybe they'll say, oh no, we're going to lose 2 music teachers. Maybe they'll say, no, we found a little more room in the energy line. Maybe we found a little more room here. And it's just a matter of them coming back and telling us what they were able to see. And maybe there's an attrition on a teacher they didn't think about. But I think it's a conversation we should just keep having, because we're working on our end and they can start looking at theirs.
There's 4 new choice students.
Yeah, they have, that's right. Since their budget was prepared, they've accepted 4 school choice students with additional revenue.
What's your point about,
Well, they have
brings revenue.
$20,000 more than coming in expected for next year than they probably had before they voted that budget.
okay. I guess I don't really think of that as a moneymaker. I mean, because it seems like we get 20, it costs more, our per pupil spending is more than 5,000.
Well, no, but if you can put that child in where there's no extra teacher needed, there's really not that much of an extra cost.
You just fill up one more seat.
Right, but there gets to be a point where
No, I understand what you're saying.
It ticks over,
There's a
and then
breaking
Right,
point.
but
Yeah.
for 4, we're saying, but for 4 students,
But I think strategically,
right, Alex, I don't know enough
they
about
make
it.
it so they'll add students where they do not have to add teachers.
I mean, the biggest issue in the school committee budget, if we're talking about it, is salary attrition. And I don't know what they did when they went through it, and I know we've got some people here in the school committee, but, the school committee tends to have a larger turnover year over year of employees, where teachers leave or employees leave and they're replaced by employees at a different pay scale. But yet, the budget, as it needs to be, anticipates no turnover. And so we budget every teacher or every current employee with their steps and increases. But if somebody goes out and somebody comes in, there's a difference. Every year, there's a difference. Now, I know we go back a couple of years when there was a state incentive for teachers to retire. It was a massive difference. It was tens of thousands of dollars. And it may be that also. And I don't know how they looked at it, whether they went teacher by teacher or just took all our current salaries and moved everybody up. But that alone is, if you're looking at it closely.
I would assume that they look at a snapshot in time, and they'll adjust for those that
Because
don't
otherwise,
have
it's
retirements.
impossible.
Right.
It's how many employees? What do they got? 400 some?
400 employees, but I think if you look at the superintendent's line item as an example, you're going to see that line item is lower because they know the attrition is there. Whereas an English teacher, they may not announce until May 31st that they're retiring. They have no way of knowing.
Right.
So I think at a certain point in time, they'll take the attrition and put it in, but afterwards.
Other than the fact that we're required to pass a balanced budget at town meeting, my take is on a $65 million budget, $220,000 is there. And to start cutting things, because I guarantee you the revenue we have from the state, whether it's Chapter 70 money or Chapter 90 money or cherry sheet general money for the general government, isn't going to be what we put into the estimates. It's going to be close, but it's not going to be there. So we're going to be off one way or the other, and we may be off a good amount.
Yeah, so Mark's suggestion was not the 150, but go back and ask them, so you were saying 220, you take the 100 off and find, put it out of, whether it's free cash or something else, and ask for, see if they can find 120 in their budget? Was that your recommendation? So I guess those are the two options on the
That's where I'm
table.
sitting right now until we go through, because we may want to add things and delete things from the town side.
Again, to me, it would make sense to sort of make that recommendation after we've gone through.
No,
it.
I agree with you.
I mean,
I don't think
I don't
we're
know,
prepared
to
do that.
do it right now.
Right, I don't think-
Yeah, actually, Richard, I don't know if you know this, or maybe we'd have to have Stephen.
Yeah.
I mean, because this impacts potentially free cash. I mean, the initial idea, at least last fall, was to go to the town on this DPW facility and ask for bonding and
There
all
won't
of
be
it.
anything on this meeting.
You don't think so?
No, there's zero. No, on this coming warrant,
Yeah.
there won't be anything.
So what are we looking at then?
We don't know yet, Alex. You may be looking at next
Well,
fall, you may be looking
No, we're
at next
talking
spring.
about this spring, is it 78? Is there some small amount of free cash, or did you use that for the budget?
Right now, there's $500,000 in free cash that's unappropriated.
Yeah, there's nothing going in for DPW.
Now,
Steven said it the other night.
There are a
Okay,
number
I missed
of
that.
articles that have
So
been
he
presented, now whether
doesn't
you folks
anticipate
accept it or
trying to
not is
get
a
the
different
committee.
Okay.
scenario. I mean,
And that was the fund?
The 78,000 I did request as part of the amount we owe on this building.
Okay.
But I mean,
But that's a choice.
I don't know the numbers, but I assume that we can ask Tom Maas and the school department to look at their current budget, and if they have money they were gonna turn back next year, encumber it for free, full-day kindergarten. There's $100,000 of of one-time money.
That's the 100 you're talking
Well,
about.
I don't know. I'm just saying that I could sit here and come up with you can come up with 20 sources of one-time money probably. I mean, so I'm not prepared to say it right now, but because I don't know what it is, but I truly believe that we're killing ourselves over an amount of money that's not there, and making compromises that we ought not make and don't need to make. That's my point. We don't need to cut the capital budget as severely as is being proposed. We don't need to cut our OPEB contributions, and we don't need to cut our, or raise the taxes as much as, however we want to do that. We don't need to do it. Because
But you say we don't need to do it. I mean, the school committee said, well, we don't need to cut the music program, and we don't need to cut the...
No,
No,
but my
I'm saying there's other money we'll find as we go through the budget. Is that what you're trying to say? Or
Oh,
are
good
you
deal with it,
talking
right.
about the warrants? We have to go through the warrants.
No, I think it's a combination of both, Marie, but I agree, there's probably additional revenue, there's one-time costs we can use, whatever it is, I just don't want us, do something stupid because we've got to balance it to the penny when this budget isn't that perfect anyway, based on the assumptions we make on revenue. I mean, what's our motor vehicle revenue this year relative to last year's budget? We're
Right, for next year?
No, the current year. The current year, we misguessed at using
yeah,
lots
well,
of experience.
right.
Doesn't say it's going to happen again, Paul. I'm just using that as an experience.
No,
as an
I mean,
example.
I'm fully anticipating that we're going to meet FY 16's projection, 70, 80, 100, well, the first commitment was $150,000 more than last year.
Right.
So it's probably closer to 200,000 that will be over in motor
Right, I
vehicle
mean,
excise.
so when you misestimate on a line item for something like that,
Well, you don't misestimate, you do, but you can't tell when people don't buy their vehicles.
tell me who's going to buy a new car.
It was a good year
But
for
Mark,
vehicles.
everything's a moving target, like Scantic Valley. If everyone jumps into that one expensive plan, we're doomed. So
Yeah.
everything
I
is
hope I bought a
an
vehicle.
adjustment.
But that's why the employees share the cost, because if it's expensive for us, it's expensive for them, and that keeps everybody from
Hopefully.
jumping.
Paul, what is do you have the percentages right now of what increase there is on the budget for general side of the government, if it's approved as it is right now?
If it's approved right now, I actually think it's
Minus.
it's flat.
Yeah, it's
Oh, it's zero, it's not
relatively
minus?
flat.
Is it flat from last year, or is it just a fraction
if you
increase?
take out debt and employee
Yeah, take out that
benefits,
employee benefits. I think Stephen had the slide, what was it, 77,000 under?
77,000 under.
Now, in all honesty, the number that is not in there's money set aside separately for cost of living increases. That amount is 212,000. So if you net the two, the general government may go up by 150,000, which is not even it's a percent at best.
No, but do we know how much of that, like, how much of fuel savings are we getting? So, I mean, like, it seems like like, looking at the DPW, it seems like it was substantial, so, I mean, so when we say it's flat, I mean, a lot of, what I see is it went up in some ways, and then we got kind of rescued by the vehicle,
But
by the fuel
you're also
expenses.
defunding programs, though.
Defunding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're taking money
making
out of
major
capital, the policy programs we've got. We're cutting back programs. We are absolutely taking cuts.
You're talking about capital and
Right,
OPEB.
and-
Because, I mean, I didn't hear really anything.
Departmental.
And LPM, or not OPM, your OPED,
Departments are cutting.
You're taking hits there.
we're taking actual hits. We're not expanding any programs.
There was just that one slight expansion, which was the traffic person.
The
he was
traffic
talking
person,
about.
that was the only
it.
thing identified in the entire
Other than that,
budget.
programs are being cut.
And I say, and on the school side,
Paul, I got the number if you want.
No,
The school's having the same
people were
energy
talking,
savings.
Okay.
right,
Their contracts came in low too, and they also put in those new retrofits, so all of us are saving on their energy.
I mean, the bottom line, even with the 212, that if we added back in for cost of living increases, we're still going to be relatively flat from 16.
If you added 212, you're up $110,000.
and what are we looking like on the schools?
Schools right now, the 808,000 that was proposed is 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
If you add another 300,000, you're up, that's another percent, almost.
3.5.
So you're talking about 3.5 on the schools
But
going up.
that's not
and-
what they said, though.
Yeah, that 3.5
They
is
actually said
accurate.
2.52, I think.
Right,
and
that's-
Then the kit, but then that doesn't include the addition.
You know what, the budget that they probably have proposed there is their total all funds, because they use multiple funds in their budget. This is the general fund number that I'm referring to. The money that comes out of taxation.
Right. So the reality is that we are sitting basically on zero. And looking at the school system going up 3.5. That's the reality.
Those is what the numbers would say.
Right, okay.
So I guess we're not going to make a decision about discussion of
Well,
compromise
the
at this
only
time.
thing I was
It's
trying
just
to
moving
get from...
to the next day.
The only thing I was trying to get from the board is do they want Stephen to do anything between now and Friday on, with the school issue and talking to schools?
I mean, to me, it seems like we need to work through this so that we're comfortable with.
Okay, well, then if that's the answer, that's all I want is what you guys want to do. Everybody agree to that?
Increases to the general
Tell
fund.
Stephen just sit down
Well, we
and,
have numbers to
Yeah,
look
and
at.
that's
I
just
mean, I
for the
would think
800.
that-
well, I mean, I got one guy over here that said 120, and he's ready to rock and roll, and,
Well, no, he's
I'm
just
not.
throwing it out. That's it.
well, that was your word. You said, let me put it in my words, and I listened to your
Right,
words. So, tell me which word the group would like to go with.
Well, that's a large enough figure that you would think that the school board would begin to look at what kind of
Well, and
changes they can make to their budget.
and I also-
then we don't know for sure at this point.
And I also added the percentages just for flavor of the discussion, that we're sitting at zero and the schools are looking at 3.5% increase. And I think that's a fact that needs to be on the table too. I mean, that's the reality of what we're dealing with. And we're taking some cuts in some valuable areas. I mean, when we've got a policy where we're trying to develop the entire community and get them well in the 21st century, now we're having to back off on this. That's not a good direction for us to be going.
Well, I feel every year it goes up and down, and we're working in the right direction. The ship is
I
moving
know,
in the right
Rosie.
direction.
I know, Rosie. Yeah, because I told Rosie today, I said, if I called her, I said, I just lost 2 arms and a leg, and she said, don't you feel better with all that weight gone? You know?
Yes, you always say, I got to look at the bright side of things. We can
Okay,
do it.
so we'll ask Stephen to basically tread water, and I guess, Paul, you're going to redo the sheets, so.
I will redo those sheets so it matches up better.
Okay, is there any other requests from Stephen's office that we're going to need? We're going to bring in public safety, and
Bring in public
administration you'll be ready to go.
We'll be here anyway if we have time for that.
Okay, is there any other documents that anybody requests from public safety documents or any background research?
No, but I was wondering about, did you really want to start Friday at 7? Did you want to try to do it earlier? I'm not sure how the team feels. I'll bring in pizza or
It's already posted,
sandwiches.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's already posted.
Oh, it's already posted. Okay, because I know it's a Friday night.
Well,
employees
I would
weren't
anticipate, the speed that we went through it tonight, I'd anticipate we're a couple hours when we're out of here. I would hope, because we had a lot of other discussions tonight.
I mean, could I suggest, maybe we don't need Friday?
You could suggest it, but,
We can do next
You can
week.
make it a motion.
but right now, I'm seeing a group that I'm not sure is capable of making the decisions in the time to get our...
I'll make a motion that we take off Friday's meeting.
I think we'll get it done. Let's just go to next Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm going to vote against it,
Ask
I'm
for a
sorry.
second.
I
You can
second.
second,
I'm not
anybody can
I'm
second.
not going to second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Discussion.
Okay, it's under discussion.
So then the next, if we didn't meet Friday, the next meeting would be, well, we have a
The
regular
next
scheduled
meeting,
Monday.
is Monday,
That's-
and Monday's schedule right now
is
is packed.
Okay, so then we'd have to meet Wednesday?
That's right,
the 15th?
and whatever the next meeting
Wednesday
is.
what's the date on Wednesday?
Debbie, what's the next one after
Yeah,
that?
the 9th and the 14th set aside.
No, we've got more than that.
The 9th is next Wednesday, the 14th.
Following Monday.
We got the
14th is a
7th,
Monday.
9th,
Yeah, but the 7th is your regular meeting.
14.
and 14, and then the 16th is the public hearing. Okay, does everybody feel
And then-
comfortable we can get it done by then?
Well, we could just ask all, the rest of the employees to come in, maybe one group come in at 8 and the next come in at 9, and we get the questions to them ahead of time and finish the departments on Wednesday? The look on your face,
It's not
Mark.
gonna happen.
It's not going to happen?
I mean, I just do an
I
upfront
think so.
everything.
I mean,
and
we just,
Take time off later.
I mean, like tonight, we've discussed, I mean, heck, we spent an hour just trying to reconcile the sheets. And then we've spent a fair amount of time sort of
Some of
these,
us did.
this sort of these kind of macro issues. You know, the amount of time it actually took to go through DPW was not that great.
Richard, just remind you that Friday, there's no LCTV coverage.
Right. Now, is that this Friday, or is it the other Friday meet?
There is no other
This
Friday.
Okay, okay. So that'd be a good time for some eat and scream and holler and anything else. Oh, I'm sorry, we're on TV right now, I keep forgetting that. Take that back, folks. Okay, what's the group want to do? We got a motion, we got a second. I'll share with you, we got the schedule done. I'd like to keep pushing until we get the thing taken care of, and then we can relax. That's my personal feelings. I know it's Friday night, I realize it's Friday night, but I realize it's also budget time. So, any other discussion?
I agree with you, Richard.
Can
Okay.
we set a time limit on the meeting, like 7 to 9? So that we're
Oh, I
not
was
gonna-
thinking 7 to 8, Tom.
7 to 8? Well, I wish it would be 7 to
1
8:30.
hour,
We're
we
doing
should
here
do
at
it
7 to 8:30.
I would imagine the meetings could be much smaller if we kind of kept our comments down to one-liners, too.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, okay, I mean, I don't mean you, I mean everybody, you know, I mean. Okay, you ready for a vote then? Okay, all in favor of canceling Friday night's meeting?
Hey, you convinced me, Richard.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm gonna,
All
at 8
opposed?
o'clock, I'm standing up.
Okay, look,
8 o'clock,
why
I'm
don't we try
standing
to
up.
make a commitment to get out of here by 9 o'clock then? We can do it, if you get the 3 people coming in, and we've got another full day to do the research on. I know Mark's already got his research done, he's waiting, so we'll just get the people before us.
And my question, I'll just send the questions to him ahead of time,
Yeah.
Well, I
too.
can just tell you right now, vehicles,
Vehicles, right, it was mentioned before, yeah.
right.
And I'm just gonna ask what programs they had to cut. That would be
And-
really valuable to them, and they could even hand me a handout ahead of time,
Right.
and then I'm done.
No, I think we need programs that they have to cut. I mean, I know that the fire had a supplemental budget that you didn't
You
see,
don't want to
so
miss public safety.
that's the type of thing that you
They could
put
just
in.
bring it in,
You don't
yeah.
want to miss public safety, though.
What would be their wish list, and why would it be important? And so they probably already have that in their back pocket.
Right.
Can you check with Steve and find out about capital? Nail that down.
Yeah.
And I'm going to double check. It seems like I have a file that you asked me to send you, and I don't think I sent it.
Okay.
There's so many files floating around,
Yeah.
I was stressed out having to read to the second graders.
Would you like a motion to adjourn?
Yes, I'm just stretching, okay. I
We
move
entertain a
Can we have a
motion?
motion? Yeah, I'll entertain a
Yes,
motion to
end the
adjourn.
meeting.
You making a motion?
Yes, I will.
And is it being seconded? Second, all in favor? Aye. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you watching us this evening. I hope we provided some information to you on the town budget process. We'll see you on Friday evening, 7 o'clock, hopefully for a 2-hour meeting. Thank you.
All right.